Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Grid Talk podcast. Here, talking about the Brazilian Grand Prix that we just had, where Max Verstappen pretty much didn't seal the title, but he's certainly gone a long way towards it. And we have two guests on the show tonight. As always, Wajid is joining us all the way, actually in the country this time. This is good. And also, we've got Paul rejoining us as well. How are you both?
Very good,
my friend.
Very
I'm
good,
good,
how
my
you
friend.
doing?
Thank you. Thank you very much.
I'm very good, apart from X has decided it doesn't want to stream us again, so fair play.
Elon Musk's loss.
Yeah, exactly. We're going to have a lot to talk about, so we'll dive straight in with the most important thing. What a weekend for Alex Albon. No. Max Verstappen, 17th to 1st. I know what Wajid's after. He's not going to get it just yet.
It's fine.
But-
It's fine. Paul and I can wait for 2 weeks' time in Vegas. That's absolutely fine.
What was that intro? Was that like some sort of build-up? Max Verstappen sealed the title. He did it weeks ago. He did it races ago.
I will also make one thing clear.
Let it officially happen. Then
I'll make it abundantly clear for all the Max Verstappen fans who do watch the podcast. We are the British press. We're not in the press conference, but neither were any of the Dutch.
Hi, Max. Hi, Max. Still here.
Yeah, we've got one viewer. It probably is Max. Yeah. The people saying, is it going to be the best? Is it the best drive ever by Max Verstappen? Wajid, we'll start with you. For me, it's not, but have your view.
No, it's not. For me, it's I think his other drive in Sao Paulo where he spun it and then came back up to third. I think that was a better drive. There was a couple in 2021 which were better drives, but this was superb. It's not Senna at Donington. It's not Hamilton at Silverstone in 2008, which were two of the or Schumacher in Spain in 96, which are three incredible drives, and people's drive to survive history is unfortunately doesn't.
It only started when Liberty Media took charge.
Unfortunately, 2008, 1996, a long time ago. But for people who want to watch wet weather drives, watch those two. But did Max get lucky with the safety car and that stupid pit stop rule? Absolutely, still needs to be looked at, but that's not taking anything away. What a phenomenal drive by Max Verstappen. And once he got into the lead, he drove, controlled the race. He did what he had to do. And he pulled it out of the bag when he needed to. And that's why he's going to be soon to be, regardless of what anyone wants to think about 2, 3, 4. That is why he's going to be a 4-time world champion in 2 weeks' time in Vegas.
Yeah, we'll wait and see. It's still open. Paul, that people claiming that was one of the best drives. You'll remember Sebastian Vettel started from pit lane in Abu Dhabi, coming through the field. I think he finished third, but he took out the DRS board at one point. He had a lot of safety cars to help him out with that, and people went, "Greatest drive ever."
Oh, sorry. I also forgot to add Seb's win in the Toro Rosso in the wet as well. So
yeah,
I just wanted to add that. Thanks for reminding me.
Yeah, I mean, we've got to remember, this goes in with that Vettel Abu Dhabi result. It was a great drive, don't get me wrong, but what did he have to lose? And he's brilliant in the rain.
I mean, to answer your initial question, yes, it was the greatest drive of all time for Drive to Survive fans, no doubt about that. Which means it's the best drive in the last 5 years. So I've got no other argument on that one. It's definitely the best drive we've seen in the last 5 years. It's on a par with some of the drives that Max, as Wajid already said. There was a couple of drives in 21 which I thought were absolutely mesmeric, and they were of a quality which we hadn't yet seen from Max at that point. And it was in the heat of the battle with Mercedes and with Lewis Hamilton, who we'd already discovered was a 7 times world champion. So I kind of rate those better for different reasons. But I think that was, They were incredible drives. Wajid used an adjective which was phenomenal. I disagree. I don't think it was phenomenal. I think it was an excellent drive. I think it was based on things that maybe we haven't seen from Max too often. It would have been very easy after what happened to him in qualifying with all of the, victimization that the FIA put on them, where they picked on Red Bull and made sure they didn't qualify very well. It's a load of bullshit. We'll come on that later, I'm sure. But he had every right to be frustrated. And normally, Max would have gone out, wouldn't he? And the first thing would have been, oh, the FIA, we're so low down on the grid. This is impossible. I'm so upset. It's terrible. And he would have got all his backing from his team and Christian Horner and everything else. And it would have been very easy for him to just revert to cast, right? Except he didn't. This was different. And this is why I think this was an excellent race for him. And it's because he didn't go gung-ho at the start. He didn't have an opening centre lap. Yes, everyone's saying, oh, he did 7 drivers. No, he didn't. He did 3 drivers and 4 of them were in the pits. Let's not exaggerate it. Let's just call it how we saw it and how it actually was. It was a good first lap. It wasn't a Senna first lap. But he didn't need to do that because he knew he had the car. And also, one of the things not many people are talking about is the Honda engine has incredible drivability. It has had from the very beginning when it came to F1. It's excellent in the rain, just as the Alpine is. So those deficiencies in power disappear in the wet weather because they've got better drivability. And he knew that with the Honda. He also knew that the chassis is well set up. He also knew that he's good in the wet. So he could afford to be patient. And he was. When you look at him on lap 2 and he's right behind Lewis Hamilton, even a year ago, what would have happened? They'd have had it coming together. He'd have thrown it down the inside. He'd have gone down through the centre S's, taken them both there. Something would have happened, right? Because his head would have taken over, or his heart rather would have taken over his head, and he would have lost it all. Instead, he was measured. He was precise. He was patient. He was methodical. He picked off each driver as he saw them. He got a bit frustrated with Charles Leclerc, but only because he was making mistakes behind him. But other than that, he picked them all off as he went through. I think it was one of the best drives he's had based on he was calm, methodical, and patient throughout. And from that point alone, I think it's a great drive. I think it's excellent. I wouldn't put it as phenomenal. I'd say Sebastian Vettel in Monza 2008 was phenomenal. Like, that's just a phenomenal drive in the most incredible conditions in a car that shouldn't have won a race. Same with Hamilton the following year. There's so many of those. We've had plenty of those. I can name 20 of those that I would put ahead of this drive all time. But that doesn't diminish it. That still makes it an absolutely fantastic drive from him. And I think the whole Lando thing, lucky, no, sorry, that's too salty for me. It was an excellent drive.
Yeah,
but let's not get carried away. Because Sky right now, Max saying about the British press, blah, 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 where were they? Fucking Sky all day yesterday. I had to listen to them say, it was the greatest drive of all time. Were you around when Jackie Stewart was dominating on the Nürburgring? Were you about when Fangio was dominating the 50s? Shut the fuck up, Sky. Bias, recency bias.
Sky wasn't around that time, but yeah. I mean, we're looking at a driver that took, 17 of the 18 fastest laps straight in a row in the last end of the race.
Metronomic at the end, David. Metronomic. And he's always been like that. That's another thing that people overlook, right? Go and look at all of his other laps that he did earlier on in the season, where you could look at the last 20 laps. They're all within a tenth of a second of each other. He's always been phenomenal about that.
I do love the line from Charles's engineer. What's the fastest lap? Charles says, don't ask. You're not going to get there. But yeah, I mean, yes, he started 17. I mean, I've seen criticism of Autosport, for example. Oh, it's British press. That's why he's got a 9 on his rating for the weekend. It's like, he qualified 12th. If buts and maybes, he qualified 12th. And
I mean, Paul, I get no fault as well, but that's why they always say make sure your first lap is a lap. Make sure your banker lap is a good lap. His banker lap wasn't, regardless of the changing. His banker lap wasn't a good lap. The only person to blame him for himself being in that position was Max, and we've said it about.
But if 10 is the perfect score, then he's probably got a 9.5 for the weekend.
Yeah, absolutely. No, absolutely.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Can't have a 10 because
weekend,
you're right. There were some small mistakes, but
I've got to say, I that race finished, and I just went. For once, I actually wish it had been a dry Grand Prix, because it would have been really interesting to see if Max could have come through. Because in the wet he was going to, but could he have done it in the dry? Because that car looked really quick in the sprint, but it always does. So if you cut them through in the dry and changed it, it could have been really, really interesting. But yeah, Red Bull obviously while we're on the general subject of Red Bull, they take 25 points. They're still not really in the hunt for the constructors. Let's be honest, unless they change.
Yeah, they're not out. They're not out of it.
They're not out of it, but unless they get a second car helping
50 point
them.
swing, right? So yeah, it's going to take something, but
essentially 50 points.
But it's closer than the drivers, so actually it's more interesting because there's 3 constructors in with a chance of the constructors title, and they're all in it. The drivers has been over months, so right, Wajid?
No, it's still not over. It's not over.
I'm going to hang on to this.
Charles Leclerc's going to make a comeback.
Right. Okay.
Well,
so three retirements from Max, and then Charles wins. Yeah.
He's mathematically out of it.
Yeah, he is mathematically out of it. Why you've been seeing the post from F1? Have you?
I was taking the pit.
I had to quickly work it out. Then I was like, is he still in there? I've actually just noticed something in the Drivers' Championship. We'll come on to in a bit, but didn't know that had happened. But yeah, so Red Bull complained a lot, which we'll obviously get onto the FIA decisions later on. But there's a lot of pressure on Sergio Perez as well this weekend. He sat there. He did all right in practice, in the qualifying. This is where I'm going to have to quickly pop back to the results because he did all right for sprint qualifying, didn't he? I think. Hang on. Why have we not got sprint?
What are you talking about, David?
I'm trying to look for sprint qualifying, but for some reason the BBC for Sergio Perez.
For Sergio, yeah, he was 13th.
Okay, so he screwed up sprint qualifying as well.
Yeah.
But in practice, he didn't look too bad on the new surface. Then got back up to 8th, which, to be honest, considering it was 24 laps, normally in 48 laps you can't get up to 8th. So it's pretty good going. And then he's absolutely thrown it away in the sprints. He started ahead of Max. He's been dumped straight away by Max on lap 1. And then he's tinkled around to what turned out to be 11th, was it? Yeah, 11th place in the end for
8th in the
Sergio.
sprint.
We've just mentioned Red Bull are 50 points behind.
No.
Do we have to see a change now to have a chance of Red Bull winning the Constructors' Championship?
They're not winning the Constructors, so it's pointless.
You think it's too big a gap to even change Sergio now and go for it?
Yeah, because not only McLaren, but I do think Ferrari were very good in Vegas last year.
True.
And
one of the only tracks they were.
Yeah, but if they bring their Monza setup to Vegas, we've seen how good the McLaren Monza setup is. We've seen obviously the Ferrari took a different strategy, but they did win their race. But on those quickest tracks, that car is quicker than the Red Bull. It's pointless. It's pointless. The constructors for Red Bull, in my opinion, is over. Like, they're not winning the constructors this year. So just see out the season. If you're going to do it, they should have done it in Brazil.
Is that the same feeling for you, Paul?
No, slightly different. I mean, I agree with that. I think it probably has gone for Red Bull in terms of points, but it is closer than the drivers.
Is that why Sebastian Vettel was in Brazil? Because he got the last 3 races.
No, because the reason I disagree with Wajid is because I think. So I agree that the constructors has probably gone for Red Bull, which is why I disagree with Wajid that they shouldn't replace him. Because if you think about it, if it's gone, they've got nothing to lose now. So stick Lawson in for 3 races, or stick Tsunoda in for a race, stick Lawson in for a race, give them both a crack at it, put Sergio in the second seat, see how good they are. The problem they've got is that this should have been done months ago. This should have been done races ago, and they know that now, and they've made a mistake. But there's also lots of other stuff going on, right? The Horner, Helmut Marko power play thing is still going on. Yeah. The ownership thing's still going on with the Thai guys and the Austrian guys. So Sergio is a pawn in all of that, effectively, and unfortunately he's a Horner pawn, which means that's a bad thing, actually, probably considering we had at the start of the season. But anyway, different type of pawn. So he's in there because Horner needs to keep him there. He needs people on his side, right? And that's why he just hasn't been replaced. And we know that he's been poor. He said himself in Mexico he's had a terrible season. He admitted that. And probably for the first time this year, he actually admitted that he'd had a terrible season. I don't think he's going anywhere, and I said that all the way along this season. I don't think it makes any difference. If I were them, would I change out them? Absolutely, I would change him for the last 3. I'd switch him and Lawson around for 3 races, and see how Liam got on. He's done pretty well in the RB, but I think you can also say that Yuki's dealt with him. It's not like he's been dominated by him.
I mean, Yuki had a better weekend this weekend.
Yeah.
I mean, Yuki had a good weekend this weekend, but I would say if you took the performances of the 2 cars between, Lawson has got the advantage. We probably would have spoken a bit later in terms of a driver market thing, but obviously there was the vision of Christian Horner coming out the Williams motorhome. James Vowles says it's to do with their new coffee brand that they've got from Argentina, but hey, I doubt it. Now the big rumor is, or has been, that he wasn't in there for Colapinto. He was in there to try and get sights out of his contract. What do we think of that one, Paul, before we ask Wajid?
I said it earlier in the season. I was a very big advocate when we found out that Lewis Hamilton was going to Ferrari early on in the season. I said the best thing that Red Bull could do now is to go out and seal Carlos Sainz on a contract and do it for a long term, because they then get 2 qualified race-winning drivers that can go head-to-head. We know that Sainz has had history with Verstappen that wasn't particularly helpful, but they were both in their first season. Their fathers didn't particularly see eye to eye in the pit lane either, so there was a lot of tension in there, sure. But it's nothing that Christian can't handle if he wants a really good team of 2 drivers. The other part of having Carlos Sainz on board means that you push Max, which means you get more out of Max. And on the top of that, if Max suddenly decides, actually, do you know what? Screw you guys. Horner's gone. My team manager's gone. Helmut Marko's going. I'm out of here. And he goes to Mercedes. Well, great, because that's fine by then. They've still got Carlos Sainz. They've got someone that can win races still, maybe a title. Also, what it does, it means that he can't hold them to ransom. He can't go in there and say, I want 100 million a season. And they go, no, sorry, mate, we've got Carlos as well. We don't need to pay you 50 million, 100 million, 75 million, whatever it was. So I said early on in the season, I thought it was a very good opportunity for Red Bull to secure him early on. They didn't. He had opportunities to go to Mercedes or Audi. He didn't. He's gone to Williams. I think that's probably what Christian Horner was in there talking about, yeah.
Yeah. What's your view on that?
I literally said it, 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago?
Yeah.
I literally said it on the stream 2 weeks ago. If you're gonna,
yes, we've had a whole year of us saying things, but I mean, Lewis Hamilton only in a Ferrari yet, so I don't remember everything.
Something else I was right about.
I said it 4 years ago. Does that count?
Yeah. You think I'd get bored? You think it'd get boring being right, but it's really not. But nah, in terms of science, I think it's a very good. It should have been the move Red Bull made before they signed Sergio to that extension. If you weren't going to give it to Danny Rick, who was shocking this year, proven win and all that, Sainz has been out of his contract since essentially before we all knew he lost his job. Before the first race of the season this season?
Yep.
Yeah, it's January.
It's 10 months.
So it's not like he wasn't available. I don't understand what sort of Sergio they expected to show up, because his fall off from that Force India Pink Panther to now
Pink Mercedes
has been ridiculous. Like, there's been fall offs in Formula One, but this has been nuts. So I don't understand what they were expecting. So if you want to talk about getting Sainz out of his contract, go for it. I think the talks of Colapinto, because there were rumors of Colapinto, I think they're very far off.
I think they were rubbish. There's no point in doing it now either. You've got no strong bargaining chip by going in and asking for Colapinto now, because you don't know who you're going to use next year. Why would you sign a driver that's going to cost you $6 million to get out of his contract during the cost cap era, and you're going to sign him to sit on the bench until maybe one of the other drivers isn't going to be at a team that you think we've got? That's silly.
Not but what Williams are asking. Williams are asking for $20 million.
20 million, yeah. So, but either way,
even
if it was
Colapinto,
3 or 6 or 15 or whatever, there's no point in doing it right now if they're not going to make the change now, is there? They're going to make the
No,
change next year. They're going to keep Perez. They're going to keep him in the car until next season. They're going to see how he goes in the first 5 or 6 races. And if then it doesn't work, then they promote Lawson if he's having a good time, or they promote Tsunoda if he's having a good time. And then they then go, okay, now we need a spare guy. By then we've had several Formula 2 races. Arvid Nibblad might be lighting up F2. They've got people in the wings if they really want to put someone in the second RB seat.
I don't think the Red Bull Driver Academy is very good.
I don't think so either, but I think Lindblad is probably the only one I've seen out of all of them, and he's certainly not ready for F1 yet.
But I still don't think he's good enough.
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult because he's so young and quite inexperienced still. But yeah, the idea of spending 20 million to get Colapinto, who's done what 4 or 5 races.
If you're going to spend 20 million on Colapinto, why not spend 30 million?
I just think, and we all know, but just opening out that the politics side of Red Bull and Red Bull, the organization, and now into Red Bull Racing, is now openly and destructively affecting the team in terms of the performance, the race management, who's in the car and things like that. It is now. And they got lucky this year because the car was so far ahead when we came to the first race of the season. Yeah. People only caught up. Well, McLaren only caught up by the time we got to Miami, race 5, race 6. So they had the 5-6 race advantage. They cannot do that next year because the architect behind the most dominant car in history, he's not there anymore. We've seen the fallout of the car. We've seen the lack of development in the car. Red Bull not having an idea. Forget Mercedes. I don't think they're going to be anywhere. I think there's a very good chance next year that the Red Bull not only come in 3rd place next year in terms of the car in the opening race of the season, but it's a long way back in 3rd place. And we could be that late noughties, early 2000s of McLaren versus Ferrari, and Red Bull need to fix that more than anything else.
Agreed.
Yeah, I think being that far back as well is going to obviously ask questions of Max, especially if Fernando Alonso leaves Aston Martin and, we know who's going to Aston Martin, things like that. But we'll move on from Red Bull because they're going to come back up later in the show anyway. And the first thing I'd ask is we're talking about Lando Norris. I know he's meant to have had the quickest car for most of the season. I don't think it's by a huge margin if it is. I think they actually looked at it and Red Bull's still being quickest in qualifying by an averaging out. But is second in the championship still a success for Lando Norris? It's his first time going for a championship. He was a long way off when he first started. No, Wajid, this is not me trying to find excuses.
No, I'm gonna let Paul go first anyway.
Yeah, we'll go with Paul first on this. Is second still a great result for Lando?
Yeah.
Even if it's by luck and not talent.
Yes, it is, because if you go back to the start of last season, at the beginning of 2022, I think memories are short, right? Beginning of 2023, they went off to the Middle East for the start of the season, and the McLaren was absolutely nowhere. I mean, do you remember how terrible that car was and how they were both struggling in that car?
It's
back at the grid.
Alpines, I think.
They were pretty much the 9th best car on the grid, and it took them a long time to kind of develop the car. But by mid-season, they were kind of up to pace and starting to work well. So we're only talking about 20 months ago, okay, that car was awful and the team were really struggling still. And in essence, what we've seen is a ton of work from them. One of the biggest things that they did was that their wind tunnel came on online. They've been using the Audi wind tunnel, believe it or not, in Germany for many, many years, for probably about 15 years now. Finally, their own one comes on board, and it makes a massive difference because every time they've put stuff in there, the results have said, yep, this is good. They put it on the car, and the results have been good. And that's happened throughout 2023 and then again in 2024. Now, the reason I'm caveating all of this is because I think our memories are very short. 2 years ago, if we'd said to Lando Norris, you'll have a crack at the championship, an outside crack at it, you'll win plenty of races, you'll get lots of pole positions, and you'll finish second in the World Championship next year, would you take that now? They would have bitten the hands off of people giving them that at the beginning of 2023. and we're not talking more than 20 months ago. So I think, is it a success from where he's come from and how badly that McLaren struggled? Yes, it is, but it's tempered by it could have been so much better this year. He could have been more competitive this year. He definitely could have won more races this year. He definitely could have led from the line better this year. But they'll use it as a learning year. And I know people have said, well, 6 years into a career, you shouldn't be learning stuff. But I disagree, because when you're fighting for a championship, it's very different from when you're just driving on a regular basis. You have to think differently. You have to react differently. And the team has to do that as well. The team have not been a championship winning team for over 20 years. So I think all of that together, I'm not making a mistake. I'm not making excuses for McLaren. I think they've done poorly at times this year and they've been punished by it. And Red Bull have picked up the pieces. But that's no different to how McLaren were back in 1986 when Prost won the championship, when there were 3 better drivers in the championship and 2 better cars ahead of him. That's how it happens sometimes. Experience pays off. And Max is the experienced person in that run. But I would say overall, yes, I think it is still a success for Lando.
Wajid, I'm going to add something into just before you start. I've just gone back to Bahrain. Lando Norris finished 6th, 48 seconds behind Max Verstappen, only 2 seconds ahead of Lewis Hamilton, and in turn, 8 seconds ahead of Oscar Piastri. So no McLaren's even in the top 5 before. So it wasn't just going back to last year; it's even this year.
Good either, yeah.
But yeah, do we associate McLaren this year like Manchester United? I know you're a United fan. Let's get a cup. Let's taste success and build from that. And that's what we're trying to do with the constructors.
No, because United have had, even though United are in their worst period, they've still had relative success. They've still seen more trophies than Newcastle have in the last 30 years.
Oi! No need for that.
It's true though.
There's no need though.
No.
Well, welcome to the new Grid Pulse podcast with me and Paul.
It's fine because Carabao Cup 2 years ago. Anyone want either one you want to happen that day?
We made a final. We're happy.
Yeah, but that's what this isn't. So I think United's the wrong sort of team. We still taste success. We still know what lifting trophies is.
Okay, well, with McLaren not knowing about it. Oh, okay.
No, but that's
almost the Spurs.
Yeah, no, that's fair. No, it's a failure. It's an abject failure. He should have. There are not years where you get a car this quick. As Lando Norris has been here 6 years, he should know what it's like. He knows what it's like to be in a struggling car. Cars like this do not come often. And I'm going to go back to those stupid comments he made about Lewis being in the quickest car and it's easy if you only got to beat your teammate, stuff like that. Well, Lando, you little shit. Look what happens when you have the quickest car. You fucking bottle job. Yeah? You fucking utter bottle job. So I've been going back through the results because, let's say, what we say, Miami is when McLaren effectively became the quickest car. I think we're all in relative agreement, right?
Yeah, to a point, I think.
Okay, so Miami won. San Marino, Emilia Romagna, whatever you want to call it, he should have won. He didn't. Monaco, fine. The Ferraris are quicker, but he qualified 4th. He finished 4th, and he was well off his teammate. Canada, he finished 3 seconds, but I'm pretty sure he was on pole and he bottled the start. From what I remember, should have won. Spain, he definitely bottled the start because he ended up behind Russell. He ruined his race. He should have won. Yeah. Austria, obviously, we both know what happened with Lando and Max with 2 or 3 laps ago. Cool, is where it is. Britain, not his fault. I don't know why McLaren gave him the option as to which tire you want to be on when they had a set of mediums, and everyone went, "What the hell are you doing?" Fine, cool. I won't give him that. Hungary, we know what McLaren did. Oscar wanted his first win. Whatever, cool. Another 7 points. Yeah. Belgium, he was nowhere. Holland, he dominated. Italy, not only should McLaren have done a 1-2, he should have won that, and yet he still ended up behind Oscar because, McLaren vibes. Azerbaijan, his teammate dominated. Nowhere that weekend. Singapore, he won. USA he screwed up. Mexico, again, his own fault. He was that far back.
Yeah.
Going through all those results, this is a man in his 6th season who is it doesn't matter. He's constantly made mistake after mistake after mistake, whether it's his start or his race, and he's not been and in some situations he's not been helped by the team. Absolutely. But his second success win in the longest calendar year. You've essentially had 18 races to evaporate. What was he, 60 points behind? So
roughly 60.
So in old money, in the old term, 30 points. You've had 16 races to essentially evaporate, and you've not done it. You are now further behind. You are now further back now after Brazil than you were at the end of San Marino. It's a fucking bottle job, and I don't care how it comes across. I'm never going to get a grid. This podcast is never going to get a grid pass because we pissed off too many people.
That's a fair point. I mean, I would.
It's a bottle. He's totally bottled it.
I'm gonna. This is one thing. A lot of people suddenly gone, okay, Lando, you bottled it. Maybe a little bit. A lot of people seem to have a little bit of Wajid's view, a little bit of Paul's view, unless they're extreme kind of, Max fans or Lewis fans or whatever. Which, like we said on the last time, somehow Max and Lewis fans are best friends to go against Lando these days. What on earth? Tell that back to COVID times and tell us that's going to work. But yeah, in terms of Lando, let's say.
Sorry, David. Before you carry on,
go on.
I know the question here is second still a success. Second still not a guarantee at this moment in time. There's only 20 points between him and Charles Leclerc.
But I'm kind of looking at what's left and thinking McLaren should be competitive enough for that to be fair. But in terms of, let's say Lando finishes second this year, there's a huge different mindset, I think. I think this season, almost Lando's been like a kid standing outside a sweetie shop, and all of a sudden the door opened in Miami, and he's been allowed to run riot in it, and it's almost his mind's just gone, right, I've got a chance of this championship, and he's pushed too hard at times, and that's where the mistakes have come in, and especially the starts. There's something chronically wrong there. We know that because you don't take that many pole positions and not lead that many laps.
I mean, look what happened. Sorry, look what happened at the restart in Brazil. It was pathetic.
Yeah. I just think that if we got to a start next season, everything's 0-0. We start again. It's a completely different mindset, and I think we could see a different Lando Norris going off his junior formula, where when he does get out in front and he is leading championships, he kind of just disappears and runs away. Yeah, Nick. I will add, Nick is a massive Lewis fan.
So I'm gonna pose a sub question within this question.
No, feel free.
We're talking about Lando coming in with a different mindset, etc., etc., etc. Lewis Hamilton is in a Ferrari that could challenge for the world. That could challenge for the world title. A potential rejuvenating Lewis.
Yeah.
Leclerc, who I think has had a very underrated season given the up and down of that Ferrari.
Yes.
That's a much stronger driver pairing. And two stronger drivers. Max, depending on the car, that's a full-time world champion. He's going for history. He's going for five. He's potentially going for 5 in a row. And we don't know what Oscar's going to come like into next season, because that man has got 2. He's now got 2 wins, and you could say he's been more informed than Lando has over the second half of the season. There's an argument there. If Lando's not been able to show in a 2-man race that he doesn't have the bottle, what makes you think in a 5, potentially 6-man race, this is ignoring the Mercs because I don't think they're going to have the car, where you have 2 drivers with 11 world championships between them who are totally ruthless in their mindset, along with, in my opinion, in Charles Leclerc, a driver who's better. What makes you think he's going to beat those 3 drivers?
I just think that if you look at the first half of the season where Max built up his lead, there's nobody. There's nobody to challenge him whatsoever. I know Sergio was meant to be there, but he's still miles off the pace. Whereas the second half of the season, yes, we're saying McLaren have had the quicker car, but then also Piastri's had the quicker car as well. And Leclerc's got some wins, and Mercedes has picked up in mid-season and sort of disappeared off to the land of cuckoo land. I think if you're going to have a competitive championship where everybody's taking wins off each other, it's totally different pressure to like now you're going, right, there's Lando or Max. That's pretty, we said it in the summer break, even though Leclerc was there, we didn't think Leclerc was it. We said Lewis Hamilton was in the championship fight. And then Mercedes decided to go experimenting yet again. But I just think that Lando I want to give Lando until 5-6 races into next season. Let's say the car performances are all pretty equal, because that's what it seems like it probably will be. And let's see what he does from the start of that before we start calling him weak-minded and a bottle job and etc. But personally,
I think you can have that view. No, you can have that view about this season, because that's what Wajid was saying. He's saying what he believes for this season. I don't necessarily think that makes Lando a bad driver. I don't think it means that's how he's going to be for the rest of his career. I think it's a fair point about how he's dealt with this season. I've put up the argument that actually I think it's just a lack of an experience and just not having the opportunities before, and they've almost gone too far to grab them too hard. But I'd also say I'd point to history, right? And there are plenty of examples of world champions that have bottled it the previous season before then going. Alain Prost, go back to 1982. Renault called him a bottle job in 1982. He lost the championship. They called him a bottle job again in 1983 when actually he should have really won the world championship. And then he got called a bottle job again in 1984. When he
I need to get some nostalgic music for when we have Paul on, because it always goes back to the 80s.
But I'm using it as an example of a man that we now revere as a 4-time world champion, a man that dominated and was only dominated by one other driver for pretty much the whole of his career, which was Ayrton Senna. That man came back from being a bottle job and he won 4 world championships. It can happen. It's not something that can't happen, right? Nigel Mansell was called a bottle job for the first 5 years of his career and came back and won a world championship. It can happen. So I'm not against what you were saying, David, in terms of can he come back next year with a different mindset and maybe win a title? Yeah, he can. He can come back next year and potentially win a title. But I think it's really tough when you look at the fact that Lewis could actually be in a world championship potentially winning Ferrari. Leclerc will be rejuvenated by the fact that he's got Hamilton alongside him and he wants to prove that he's the fastest driver every single lap, which he probably is. And Max is going to be going for 5. That's a tough ask, even for a guy that was mentally stable and ready to take on a world championship.
And sorry, Paul, I just want to add, Prost, 2 of Prost's world title, he was in one of the most dominant cars the world's ever seen with that Mercedes.
McLaren.
Sorry, McLaren.
85, he had the best car.
Yeah,
but not for the whole season. Ferrari were better than him.
Yeah,
and his other 3 titles, what the main one he won actually was with the Williams in '93, which is probably one of the most dominant cars of all time.
Yeah, again, but even Mansell in '91, that Williams was dominant. Even
not in '91, it wasn't. Prost was in a Ferrari.
Oh shit!
And then he had a year off.
When he had a year off because he was.
He was really shit that year. He scored no points at all when he had a year off.
Did Mansell win in '92? Sorry, or was it '92?
92, yeah.
Sorry, I got my years mixed up. Apologies.
But they weren't bottle jobs. Is my point. Is that they were labelled as bottle jobs earlier on in their careers, but they turned out to be not bottle jobs at all because they learned from their mistakes. They got more experience and they applied that. So they're. You can't just say a guy that's bottled it one year is a bottle job for the rest of his career. It doesn't work like that.
But hang on. But my point is, those 2 guys were in very, very good cars, and they weren't facing.
Funnily enough, though, Wajid, all world championships are in really good cars.
No. But they were cars that were, fairly up there and stuff like that, and they weren't facing people with 11 world titles, and you weren't quite.
What are you talking about? Prost won the world championship in 1989 as the same car as Ayrton Senna.
I said 11 world titles. 11 world titles.
Doesn't matter how many world titles. Go against who you said they couldn't go up against anyone. Prost literally went up against Ayrton Senna and won.
Lando can't go up
Well,
against Max. Lando can't go up against Lewis.
I don't 100% agree that he won it in '89 in fair circumstances, but that's not the point.
That's a whole different topic. That's a whole different.
That's
podcast.
definitely a podcast we could do about '89 instance.
That's a whole different. My point is, it was more of a 1v1 shootout, not against arguably the greatest drivers of their generation. And bear in mind, Prost was labeled a bottle job, but he was still considered one of the best drivers on the grid at the time. Lando's not considered that, even at this moment.
Yeah, he is.
No, he's not.
Yeah, he is.
He's not better than Max. He's
definitely one of the top 5 or 6 drivers in the world right now.
He's not top. You talk about Prost as a one or two. You talk about Mansell's 1, 2, 3.
Not in 1982, 83, you didn't.
No, but you weren't still going. Oh, he's top 5. Yeah, there was no argument of he's top 5, top 6, stuff like that. Nah, he was up there. Lando's not looked at like. Lando is not looked at like that.
I think you're mistaken, Wajid. I think you're getting confused between a generational talent, which Lando is not, and I agree with you, and a top driver. He is a top driver. He isn't a generational driver. But then we've had generational drivers come along once in a generation. That's why they're called generational drivers. We've been lucky that we've got 2 at the same time. Before that, we had Schumacher. Before that, we had Senna. And before that, we had Clark and Fangio. There's about 7 drivers we could put in that list. And Lando isn't in that list. But then nor is Fernando Alonso. But he's still a top driver, right?
He's not better than Max. He's not better than Lewis. I don't think he's not better than Leclerc. I think Sainz.
I would say he's just the same as Leclerc. Leclerc can't win. Leclerc can't drive to save his life. He can do a single lap, but he can't do a race.
I wouldn't. I think Leclerc's better.
Shouldn't get blown away by Lewis next year in the races.
I think Sainz is better than him. And to be honest, there's not at this moment in time, given how their careers are playing out, there's an argument between Russell and Lando if either one of them are good enough, in my opinion. You got to meet like
I think they're top drivers. They've won races. They've proved they can do it in all formulas. They've proved they can do it at any particular level. I would absolutely say they were top drivers. Were they generational drivers? No, of course not. Top drivers, yeah, for sure.
You're not a top driver unless you win it.
So Piastri's not a top driver then. Okay.
I would say
I don't think
some weird parameters there, but yeah, I think he's a top driver.
If you're given the fastest car on the grid and you can't do the job, you're not a top driver.
He's won races in the fastest car. He hasn't always had the fastest car at every single race and every single session.
So
when he's had it, it's been by half a tenth or a tenth. Like the cars, it's not he's not had the McLaren. It's not been the best car for all 18 of the last 18 races. Not how it works. This year has to be one of those weird years where the cars have been very equal. And they've been within a couple of tenths. Those top 6 or 7 drivers have been within a couple of tenths. And you can switch them around all over the place from race to race and type of surface and heat and all sorts of other things. So you can't say he's definitively had the best car for 18 races of the season either. It's just not factually not true.
Let's throw this out there. If Lando, let's compare him to British drivers who may have done well or may have nothing. Is Lando a Nigel Mansell where it's going to take him time to reach his best, and if he reaches his best, he might go and win a title? You know, think about Mansell. It took him years of seconds, thirds, fourth. Yeah.
Well, actually, it took him 5 years to stand on the podium. It took him 6 years to win a race. So we're talking about a similar length of time.
Or are we looking at maybe a David Coulthard who came in, had dominant cars? You know, you think he had the 95 Williams, not dominant, but still a very good car. Then he jumped into a McLaren, had one win in 98 with that dominant McLaren. One win. I mean, talk about bottle jobs. I mean, maybe you shouldn't let Mick Hakkinen pass him first race just because of a radio call, but hey.
I think Coulthard's a good measuring stick, but then obviously Coulthard was never a world champion. And I'm not entirely convinced that Lando will be, but I think he's got a decent shot next year. But as Wajid said earlier, these kind of cars don't come along every year. They don't come along very often. So he's either got to do it next year, or then maybe who knows? Maybe he doesn't get another shot.
I do swear Arai probably did design a brand new helmet. How he ever got in Schumacher's in Monaco '96, I'll never know. Because completely different shaped chins.
I don't know why. I don't know why Schumacher wanted to punch him at Belgium. He would have broken his hand on that.
Well, yeah, it would have. We'll keep that discussion for over winter when we know exactly where Lando finished. This could get tasty. And what we're going to move on to very quickly before we move on to everything is the French Delight. Now, who had on their podium celebration two Alpines? I know Paul said that he thought Alpine would do very well, but
didn't expect him on the podium though.
9th to 6th in the championship. Looked at scoring over 40 points at one point with a 1-3 until Max obviously came through. Ocon was pulling 5 seconds a lap on Max at one point. Don't ask me what was going on there. And you just look in there, Ocon, I mean, let's say if we hadn't had a red flag, Ocon still could have won that race. Let's put it that way, how quick he was going. You know, the team had, 16 points before this weekend? Something like 16. That? Yeah, and they've ended up scoring 33 from a race.
Paul, no, Paul, please do.
Paul, go on. At least they're friends now.
Well, yeah, temporarily because they're basically splitting up at the end of the year. Yeah, I mean, it's. I think of all the things that happened over the weekend, it's probably the most incredible, really, when you look at it in terms of result. And if no one would have had the pair of them being on the podium, one of them might have dreamt of being on the podium, but not both. I think it's great for Alpine. I think it's great for the new management at Alpine. They've had a lot of restructuring at Stone over the winter, and then again throughout the summer, a lot of upheaval. Obviously, they've basically surrendered again. The French have surrendered yet again because they've decided they're going to replace their engine with a Mercedes engine from next season. So that's gone. Wajid's already crying.
I think it's about time we did bring in this bit.
But the point is, they've actually had the perfect engine when you think about it for this weekend. It's so down on power, but one of the things the Renault engines always have, right back to the early days when they were with Red Bull, was drivability, and it's perfect for this kind of weather. It doesn't make any difference about their loss of, if they're 70 brake horsepower down, they don't care in a way. They don't care about any of that. Their DRS isn't that efficient. Well, I don't care about that anyway. It was the perfect time for them to have a great result. Also, for Sauber to have a great result, and it just shows you that the two teams that really needed a big result this weekend. One has finished on the podium with 2 cars, and the other one has finished absolutely nowhere again. I think 13th is the best that they could do in a race where they had an opportunity to score points for the first time. So well done to Alpine. I think it's a real fillip for their new management team. I think it's great for the team overall. They've now got a chance of finishing 6th, although I still think they'll get beaten probably by Haas and RB and finish 8th. But at least they're going to finish ahead of Williams now, because Williams basically have blown themselves. I mean, as well as a massive amount of cost, and they're going to win the Deconstructors Championship for sure. Their mechanics are probably still in Brazil fitting stuff back to the chassis. But, my God, what a terrible weekend for them. But doubly so because Alpine scored so many points over the weekend. So now they need a weekend like that, there's no chance of that happening. So, yeah, absolutely terrific. I said I thought they were coming back because they're one of the few teams actually still putting stuff and upgrades on the car, still making changes to it, trying to learn about what can happen next year. And it certainly couldn't get any worse for them. So actually, I think this is a fine reward for their hard work. Although I will say this, it doesn't paper over the cracks of how bad that car has been or how bad that engine's been or how badly actually the pair of the drivers have driven in most of the races this year. It doesn't improve any of that. It doesn't take any of that away, but well done to them anyway.
Wajid, your view on the French Revolution?
I think Paul's really, minus the whole war thing, because I still want to be able to go to France without getting persecuted. I know Paul hit the nail on the head in terms of the car, the result, the drive. It was just a very... I think this is why we love where the races as F1 fans, because of the unpredictability it draws up, which is why, and I'm sure we'll get into it later on, which is why... Can we just have a wet weather tire, please? Please, a good one that we can race in. But no, unbelievable result. I think there was a big part of me that didn't want the red flag because I was like, Ocon could win this, Ocon could.
I was the same. I was exactly the same. Yeah, I was all up for the Alpine win.
Yeah, I was like, Ocon could really win this because Lando's really struggling behind George, and that car is going, and Max, and I know all three of them did have to pit and stuff like that, but the pace of that Alpine during that time, I was like, hang on, what the hell's going on here? But no, it was a phenomenal drive, and even after the restart, okay, cool, Max drove off into the distance. but those Alpines were comfortable in second and third.
Yeah.
It wasn't like they were getting hounded by Leclerc, Russell, Lando behind them. They were comfortable, and they just especially Ocon just drove away. Ocon was like, all right, cool. I don't have the pace for Max, but I'm chilling here. So it's not even like it was a drive that was undeserved, or it was yes, there was a big element of luck.
Another slice of luck involved, but you're right.
there was
deliberate.
there was there was a big element of luck involved with the safety car. Don't get me wrong, and the free pit stop, which that also needs to be looked into because it's getting beyond the joke now. But two great drives from a team that has been floundering all year. Now all of a sudden could potentially find themselves finishing sixth in the constructors' title out of absolutely nowhere. I do agree with Paul though. I think the Haas and the Red Bull Cash App, Visa, MasterCard, PayPal car are better, and there's only 5 points that separate 6th to 8th anyway. So yeah. I do see them both end up overtaking, but no, great result. It was just it's nice to have a feel-good moment once in a while in sport, and that was a very, very feel-good moment for Alpine and the team and stuff like that.
I've got to say, I think that Ocon in particular, I mean, Gasly came through from about 13th and followed Max through and had the advantage of the extra stop, but Ocon was at the front all weekend in terms of that race. You know, he always looked like he was holding on to third, I think, once he got past Tsunoda. He was looking quick, and then driver of the day, Max Verstappen. It's like Ocon's had so much criticism in his career, but he's actually turned up, and it's nice that Max can actually go to Brazil Weybridge and not want to punch Ocon in the end. So I mean, that was quite good. Just while we're on the topic of like sort of the lower teams, obviously we've got a load of people who had differing weekends. Paul mentioned one, Williams. They were looking at the front row of the grid at one point, and then Albon stuck it in the wall. Colapinto was already in the wall. Colapinto went into the wall again. I know a Williams mechanic who texted me during the race and went, I am not looking forward to going in on Monday because he's probably got to fly to Brazil and go pick up the pieces. It's just really not the day for Williams. RB, did they really take advantage of what they had? I'm not 100% sure, to be honest.
No,
third of fifth on the grid. Third of fifth on the grid. They were net ahead of the Alpines.
Yeah,
they did it.
And they finished 7th and 9th. But
in a normal day, I would say 7th and 9th was quite a good result, right? You'd go, yeah, actually, well done. 7th and 9th, that's a really good 8 points. Well done, RB. But not when Alpine have done what they've done on that day from a worse position.
Yeah,
can we talk? So can we talk about the greatest formation lap start ever by?
We're going to get onto that now.
No, by Lance Stroll. Sorry,
oh yes,
the greatest warm-up lap by a driver I've ever.
The best part of it isn't the spin.
No,
I mean, if you've listened to the radio, Stroll's told, do what you need to do to warm things up. And then they go, and if you could, oh, hang on, it's stationary. What do we do now? And then he decides to turn left.
No, that's the bit that confuses me because if you just follow the outside, there's a massive run.
But also,
it's the formation lap. You can reverse all the way back. No one's going to say anything.
Turn right. There's a track. But he decides to put it in the gravel. And again, it gets better. The Brazilian crowd start chanting for Felipe Drugovich, who is obviously the Aston Martin test driver, and chanting Drugovich's name at Lance Stroll. Just absolutely crazy. And then I think he just gave up because what he did was he went and stood on the end of the gravel trap, right where the cars were going back around. Whether they were or not, we'll get onto in a minute. But he stood there. It was like somebody was just going for Lance Stroll. Please, just take me. Just take me, please.
It is one of the most pathetic things I have ever seen. And if that wasn't a sign of this man is not good enough, yes, he had his moments when he came in, but it just feels like he just
gets the pace.
His F1 race career just needs to be put down at this point.
The thing is, his race speed generally is quite consistent and quite decent. Just he can't qualify. Then when he does qualify, he pulls something silly like this, and it comes into all chaos. So that's just.
I think the best thing that could happen to Formula One at the moment is that it's quite obvious that he's got a seat for life, right? He's got a seat for as long as he wants it, really, because Daddy's not going to kick him out. But at some point, Daddy might say, look, Lance, maybe it's time to go into management rather than driving. And at that point, it's then a bit of pressure. But I think the best thing that could happen to Formula One is actually that Max Verstappen says at the end of next season, do you know what? I want a new challenge. I'm going to go and join Adrian at Aston Martin. And then they've got a choice. You either kick Lance out because you want to keep Fernando and you want to keep Max. What are you going to do with your boy now?
Yeah,
it's the best thing that can happen, honestly. It's the best thing that can happen to F1.
I still couldn't see Lance Stroll kicking Lance out for Max.
I could see him kicking out Fernando.
Yeah, to be fair, I think most people would kick Fernando out.
There was a chap in my Discord called Craig, who a little while back, a few months ago, came up with this great idea that Formula One drivers, if they can't win any races, should be limited to a maximum of 8 seasons. And then by the rules, the definition of the rules, they're removed from F1 because 8 seasons is plenty time to win a race, right? Plenty time. So if after 8 seasons you haven't won a race, that's it. Your super license is revoked. Fuck off somewhere else. Do something else.
I mean,
and then let's the younger guys come in, right? So I went back in time to figure out how many drivers on the current grid would have been removed already. How many do you think would have been removed?
Hulkenberg.
Hulkenberg is one.
K-Mag.
Perez.
K-Mag isn't just yet. K-Mag is this season. This is his 8th full season. So K-Mag, if he hasn't won one of those, he goes.
Perez wouldn't have been.
Perez would have gone because he didn't win before his 8th season. So he would have been out already 4 years ago. And that's it.
Yeah, Bottas.
That's it.
Made it. Yeah.
It's K-Mag, Hulkenberg, and Perez. That's it. So actually, it wouldn't have made that much fucking difference anyway. But I still think that rule would have been brilliant.
Well, it would, because it would change. He was 2009 world champion. 100%, because Jensen would have been, that was his 10th season, was it?
No, because he won back in 2005, so he would have been within his 8 years.
Oh, because he won a race, sorry, yes.
That's what I'm saying. As long as you've won a race within your first 8 years, you can keep your super license for life. If you don't
now, how does that work with Luca Badura?
Well, he wasn't 8 seasons when he drove for Ferrari because he hadn't had 8 seasons. He's only had 3 seasons with Minardi.
So it's not 8 seasons since you debuted. Yeah, fair enough. We'll let him on.
But you could make it like 150 races these days, couldn't you? Because that's like 8 seasons anyway. So I just thought it was a fun thing to look at. So I went back in time for at least the current set of drivers just to work out who would be on the grid.
We need to start making videos about that. To add in something that came up earlier Nick asked, are we going to touch on Lewis Hamilton's radio message after the Brazilian Grand Prix? I think we can all pretty much make it clear it isn't that Lewis isn't going to drive the last 3 Grand Prix of his Mercedes career. It's a lot more to do with the rotation of mechanics because Brazil may have been their last Grand Prix of the season.
Yeah,
I think that's right.
Yep, absolutely right. Yeah, the guys that generally speaking, for those that don't know, the majority of the mechanics don't work the whole seasons anymore. They used to do all 16 races because they were nicely spread out and you could still have a family and still stay married and see your children and all that. But these days you can't do that. So there are 24, 25 races. So they've started, almost all the teams have now split their teams into 2 sets of teams. And they will have flyaway teams and they will have home teams. And generally speaking, I think some teams like McLaren are doing like, right, you guys go and do all the South American races together. So you do USA, Mexico, Brazil. These guys are all going to have office time at the factory, and then they'll go away and do the next 3 and you guys will come home. And that's been how it's been for about 4 or 5 years, since we've been going to 20 plus races, basically.
This is also a point. What happens in a situation like Albon if every time you're going to win, Hamilton has spun you out?
Sorry, what was that one?
that was a probably from an Albon fan that every time he went for a win, Hamilton spun him out.
In reference to your 8 season thing, what happens if you essentially get murdered on the race circuit when you're about to win?
Well, I mean, I think if you've had 8 years, it doesn't matter how many times you've been taken out by Lewis Hamilton. You've got to at least win something after 8 years.
Yeah, I was going to say, Lewis isn't always going to crash into you.
No, not in all 150 races that you get a chance.
It's not 2011 with Felipe Massa. It was 2011, I think.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, because he was in the championship hunt 2010, wasn't he?
Yeah, but Massa did not help in some of those situations either. Just saying.
No, but it's okay because Felipe Massa is going to be announced as the 2008 world champion in court shortly, so it's fine.
Did you notice something over the weekend? Felipe Massa are now back on the grid.
What's that?
Felipe Massa on the grid, considering
he's always in Brazil.
But he's suing his own employer.
Nelson Piquet Jr.
No, Piquet Jr. isn't banned. Piquet is banned, and he was in the paddock. So all is quite forgiven. But yeah, we're just very quickly going through the results. Obviously, Aston Martin had a huge repair bill. Williams had a huge repair bill. Nico Hülkenberg, I think that was a little harsh. I know you got the ruling of if you get help, but if you're in a dangerous situation.
David, I sort of agree with you. I think it was harsh as well. But unfortunately, that is one of the very few black and white rules we've had for the last 35 years.
Unless you're in a dangerous situation.
Schumacher
always knew that.
Yes. And I would say that the one bad thing about it is that normally cars have had accidents by then and aren't worthy to go back onto the track.
Yeah.
There was nothing wrong with his car. The reason he couldn't get back on the car was because of a fault of the track, which was that he was beat. So that's the argument I think I would have used if I were Haas. I'd be like, well, come on. They had to push him somewhere. And then the FIA said, well, there's a safety road there that Marshall's could have pushed him down there. Well, that's not my driver's fault. What's he supposed to do now? Not go back on the race?
I do like how Hülkenberg still lined up in the pit lane thinking he's going to go restart.
Well, that's because I don't know.
Maybe they haven't noticed.
No, it wasn't that. It was actually that they'd informed the team, but the team manager didn't have a headset on. So he didn't actually know that they'd been removed from the. He had no idea. He put his headset back on and he's like, "What's all this chatter about Black Flag? What's going on?" And they were like, "We've been chucked out of the race, mate." And he's like, "What the hell? By who?" He had no idea.
We'll be on to that in a second. Also,
Ronald, you could not have timed it more perfectly if you liked.
Just to finish off people who we thought had iffy weekends or whatever. Lewis, I mean, the setup on that car was crazy. Alonso, almost crippled by the calming.
I mean, he was
one thing you don't want to be complaining about, David, when you're an old man, is that you can't get out of the car because your back hurts. Definitely not something you want to be talking about.
I mean, he was in tears in the media pen because
I think he was in tears because he realised even if they try and completely rebuild the car at Aston Martin, they're still not going to win him a championship.
I mean, obviously, I know they rebuild the car, and the car may not have been rebuilt to how it was.
Yeah,
but he had a massive chance in Q3, and it was his. That was.
He's had 2 very mediocre weekends in a row now. And honestly, if that had been anyone else on the grid at his age and his part of his, I'd be saying that's retirement form.
I mean,
that's retirement form. He won't because he's got Adrian Newey coming, but that's what he looks like. For the first time, I think in his entire career, maybe other than a couple of races at McLaren Honda with the GP2 engine, this does not look like the Fernando Alonso I know and love.
Because that Aston Martin, given how everything had played out in qualifying with Max, Lewis, Carlos, Check, there was a massive chance for him.
Yeah, he had a huge opportunity. Yeah, I agree.
So obviously there's no downplaying the bouncing and the back pain and stuff like that. But the car he was given 3 hours before, obviously in a rebuild, it's not going to be the same car 3 hours later. So
I will say one thing though. Aston Martin, Alonso, I'll finish for the mechanics and the people of Valencia. Don't know where that suddenly crept in from Alonso, but anyway, sympathy vote. But in terms of, we go back to when the backs of the drivers, not just Lewis, George as well, and everybody was, change your fucking car, as the famous line comes. As Fernando Alonso has it, are you okay, Fernando? What? Why did Mercedes get absolutely trashed for that? Yet Fernando, I mean, God knows what setup they put on the car. And there is a final word for Oliver Behrman, which we'll have to get onto him in a minute in terms of his penalties. But Oliver Behrman, off the track more than on it, but still finished 12th, and his pace was unbelievable all weekend.
I'm sorry, it's a terrible week. It's a bad weekend. Why are we? Why are we applauding bad weekends for? Okay, cool. He was quick.
I think I disagree. He outdid his teammate, a much more experienced teammate who's on a pole position on this very track in the wet.
Yeah.
He was quick when he needed to be, but he's also very inexperienced. He's never driven a Formula One car in his life on a wet track before, and so he was going to make mistakes.
Paul,
they can't be perfect.
I'm not saying it's perfect. I'm not saying it's perfect. I'm not saying like.
Where was your boy? How did your boy get on? How did Colapinto do? Oh no, he should have kept it on the track then, shouldn't he?
I'm not a Colapinto fan. Who said I'm a Colapinto fan?
You're a Colapinto stan, Wajid. I know you are.
Never. I didn't even know who the hell he was till he showed. I didn't even know who the hell he was till he showed up on the grid. I was like,
I will say one thing. So we're not here till God knows what time. We are going to move on because this is going to be a long section. So we're going to have a nice little cut bit here because this is where I'm going to have to start another video.
And guys in the chat, I really appreciate all your feedback today. Please do get involved with this section because
yes, this is going to be fun.
There's going to be a lot.
We're going to start at the start of the weekend. So let's go all the way back. The event notes were done.
Dave, I think it's better if you go through all the events first, and then we come back.
If we got 3 days for him to go through,
I just think it's better if you go through everything first, and then
I'm just going to mute myself for a couple of hours. I'll listen in.
I am just going to say, Indoor Fatty, subscribe. So Charles is that is the first one that come in. Charles with the F word, he got a fine. I think it was 5,000. 5,000 or 10,000. Oh, I can't remember what it was now.
He got fined. That's it.
He got fined. Oh, hang on. No, that wasn't actually the first thing of the weekend. First thing of the weekend was Max Verstappen, 5 place penalty. That's the first thing. Slam dunk, bang. We don't need to discuss that one, do we?
I thought you were going to say he got fined £5 then.
The next thing was actually that Pierre Gasly was late for the drivers' meeting. Okay, now we can get on to the interesting stuff. I want to add this to you all first, and Paul knows this and Wajid knows this, but a lot of people out there just don't know. The FIA race control is not the FIA stewards. So all these people going, British bias, it's Johnny Herbert. He has no choice in whether the safety car comes out, the red flag comes out. No say whatsoever. Neither does Luciano Berti, who was also on the panel. That is
he also, by the way, doesn't even have he doesn't even have a decision to make in the steward's office, which is where he actually sits. He's literally an advisor.
Yeah, so we need to throw that out there because I like that one. I kind of would have said he probably got mugged on the way there, but that also apparently happened to some Williams crew. But when do we have a Brazilian Grand Prix where something doesn't go missing from one of the garages? Just never nicked a car yet. Anyway, press conference.
Fangio got kidnapped before a Grand Prix before.
Yeah, he probably still went and won it as well.
No, he didn't turn up. They kept him until after the race had finished because they bet on it. True story.
That's a way to do it.
Ronald, as someone who's been to Brazil multiple times, the internet is actually much better than the UK's.
Yeah, I was going to say we have actually done the podcast.
No issue with Brazil. I've been to Brazil a few times. No issue with internet down
was
there.
Was it Sao Paulo or Rio?
Yeah, but not internet.
It was both. I did one in Sao Paulo. Then I did it's actually amazing, to be honest.
Yeah. First thing we had was the alleged breach from Charles Leclerc. Obviously, we know that the infringement came in from Max on terms of the language, 10,000 euro fine, 5,000 which is suspended on condition there's no further breaches of swearing in the next 12 months. Is this getting a bit ridiculous, especially for a group of drivers who don't speak English?
David, this is exactly what we used to have. Do you remember when we lost our dearly departed Michael Massey, and they replaced him with not one but 2 different race directors for a little while until Niels Vittage, I don't know, off the other guy or something. Well, we had 2 for a while. One of which decided that the hill he would die on was jewellery.
Yes.
He decided, I do not want any of these drivers wearing jewellery. It's a safety issue. Have you heard anything since he left? Has anyone complained about jewellery? Nobody's complained about jewellery,
Well,
yet
to
they
be
all
fair,
still wear jewellery,
it's
particularly
not-
Lewis Hamilton.
Jewelry isn't really the end of Michael Massey's legacy, is it?
But that's the point. It's like that was the
Don't
big
mention
thing.
it,
He
Wajid. We've
decided
kept
that
it
he
out
was
so far.
for some reason, Niels Vitti
did
just
say it.
decided that the hill he dies on is swearing.
It's a bit crazy,
Ludicrous.
especially.
These are grown men, for crying out loud. Fuck
Yeah.
off. There, book me. Put me on community service.
So, I mean, obviously, it's right. It's no more than a fine, but I
There'll be
think
community
obviously,
service next time.
Paul,
Yeah,
that's
I mean-
Paul, that's 50 gifted on Twitch because of that language.
Fuck.
I wish. If you throw it out there, though, I suppose they might look at it as, Charles realised he made a mistake and went, "Oh, sorry," made a joke of it, but sorry, I shouldn't have done that. Whereas Max was purposely doing it in the press conference.
Even so, like, can we just move on?
Yeah,
Stop
but-
highlighting that as
but-
an issue, and guess what? It won't be an issue.
But I also think all of us have played or done some level of sport, whether it's motor racing, football, whatever else, right? You're asking men in.
well, I wouldn't call some of them men, but yeah. Go on.
But you're asking people in the highest level of competition and stuff over driving a car at
Yeah.
best part 200 miles an hour, in a very dangerous sport to, please watch your language because we're putting this up. What?
Yeah,
What?
very true.
Is there any? I just that common sense goes out the window sometimes. Come. Because
Yeah, I
Max
hope
made it-
I hope they just move on from it. I really do. It's
Yeah,
just absurd.
yeah. You made your point because Max cried wolf about it and stuff like that. Shut up.
Could we
Yeah.
have an FIA rule that says the management of the FIA aren't allowed to be racist, and if they are, we fine them $50,000, because then the chief executive officer will be owing quite a lot of money and have to do quite a lot of probation.
True. You okay there, Wajid? We seem to be having a few. I don't know if you're knocking your camera over. Right. First things first. Sprint race. We didn't have any problems because we had a dry qualifying for sprint qualifying. No problems there, apart from Sergio Perez not being able to qualify. We had the VSC come out, and it was called out when they reached after they'd gone past Hulkenberg.
They were allowed to
And-
carry on racing for a while.
And before they went,
Through
they went through the two DRS points before it went
Yep.
away. We'll go with Wajid on this one first because he's kept passing it across the ball first. So we'll go with Wajid first. One,
Yeah,
was it the
Wajid.
right call? Was it the same time, right times? And in that general, did they get anything wrong?
What did the FIA get anything wrong this weekend in general? Do you say?
No, just that one VSC call in the sprint race, like the timing of it. Was it too early, too late?
I think it was a bit late. I think the FIA, there was a lot of decisions made by the FIA, and I know it's not an overtaking point. I know it's not, but he was very close to the track. He was trying to move the car forward and back and stuff like that. After 10, 15 seconds, they should have just called the VSC. I don't know why they waited as long as they did, which is what then led to the crying about, oh, well, they waited for Lando to overtake. They waited for Lando to overtake Oscar, and then they called it because then we couldn't do anything about it. And, even though Max completely ignored his delta and went, what's a delta? And then got the 5 seconds, but that didn't happen. So I just think it should have been called. I just think it should have been called earlier than the VSC was right. Just call it a bit earlier. That was my only thing.
Paul, your thoughts on that one?
I have 3 points on this particular one. The first one is, were any of the rules? Did the race director? Let's clarify this as well. The race director. This comes under the purview of the race director, which is Niels Vidich in this case, and he gets to call this. Right. Ultimately, it's down to him. Whether it's a staff member that calls it or not, it's down to him. So that's the first point. The second point is, were the rules not followed explicitly? Well, the rules around this aren't particularly explicit. They are at the behest of the race director. Ta-da! So guess what? Any rules he makes up are okay because he's making them up as he goes along. Thirdly, did he make any decision based on a competitive advantage for another driver or another team? Absolutely not. He never does. One of the few things I can tell you about Niels Vidich, even though I'm not a particularly big fan, is that all of his career, whether it's been F1 directing or directing in WEC or touring cars or wherever he's done, he's been absolutely on the money and fair. He's never favoured one driver. He's never shown any of that before. He's as close as you get to a replacement Charlie Whiting. And finally, the fourth point is, I don't think he took too long because what you're trying to do as a race director is you're trying to ensure the safety of the drivers around the track. So as long as the pack aren't actually at that accident or coming up to it without any safety car or a VSC or whatever, then I think you can let them carry on until you're absolutely sure there's just nothing you can do about that car. He was trying to move it a little bit. I don't think he would have moved it, but he was trying. I think that's irrelevant, and I think you leave it as long as you can. And that's why we criticised the FIA, and I don't know if you guys did, but I've criticised the FIA, and in particular Niels Vidich, for being too prudish on this stuff in the past and actually not using common sense. And so we've been crying out for the stewards, and in particular for the race director, to use common sense. And here he is using common sense, and people are saying, well, it should have been a bit earlier.
Yeah, Ronald has popped his view in the chat. Let me see if I can find the button. There we go. VSC should have been called earlier. No issue with the ending, though. For me, I don't think they got this wrong whatsoever. Because I honestly think Hulkenberg was in the car, and this will come up a little bit later with Lance Stroll, but I think he was in the car, he was trying to roll it out of the way, and at that point of the circuit, the nearest marshals are all the way back down at Ferradura, because there's just one small barrier between the two sections. Go back years ago, there wasn't even a barrier. So the marshals were going to take a long time to get out there. So the quickest form of action was if Hulkenberg could roll that car up against the barrier, out the way, for safety of, 2-3 laps. It could be done. And what's the worst thing that was going to happen? Nico Hulkenberg sitting in the car for 2 or 3 laps. I don't see an issue with that, with the safety settles, especially out of such a slow corner. As soon as they saw Nico getting out the car, that would have been radioed, which comes from the marshals. The marshals tell the race director, as the driver's getting out the car, the leaders have come past, which is where that still frame comes up of Hulkenberg walking along the side of the circuit with the drivers going past. And then about 10, 15 seconds later, the VSC is called. The timings of it just seem to fit, and they just tried to let the race continue and not interfere, which is what everyone's been calling for ages, like Paul said. So I don't think they got it quite wrong. Yes, it did leave Nico Hulkenberg standing out there at one point, but that was under a VSC. At no point was he walking alongside the circuit.
And you'll know this as a marshal, David. The only time you're told as a marshal that you put a driver at risk is if they're getting out of the car while the race is still underway. As long as it's under VSC or a safety car or a red flag or a pit lane abort, then drivers are free to get out of their car and move anyway.
I would also say IndyCar have a rule that until the safety crew, because they have a safety crew rather than marshals, until the safety crew get there, you don't get out the car. I don't see why that couldn't be an F1, unless the car's on fire, of course. If you're in Roman Grosjean's position, you can't sit there and wait for him to turn up.
Well, he did.
He pretty much did, yeah, but that was due to his foot being stuck. Moving on, obviously on the back end of that, we had the 5-second time penalty, which was also that Lando could try and win the championship. At the end of the VSC end, I actually thought it was going to be for pulling alongside Piastri, because that's still racing under VSC.
Yeah, well, they've been warned about that, haven't they? They've been told they shouldn't be doing that anymore.
But I don't buy this. I mean, the whole thing turned... I mean, I've got the literal press release in front of me, and it says that the the driver explained that he was awaiting the VSC end and he got a notification that he was below the minimum time. He attempted to correct the breach. No, you attempted to overtake Oscar Piastri. That's not attempt. That's somebody going, I'm going to overtake him. Oh, the VSC's still out. I don't buy that whatsoever. He's lucky to get a 5-second penalty in my book because it's almost a safety car infringement. Anybody else want to?
No, it was an infringement, but like the rules are the rules. There's no way Max's delta was the only delta on the racetrack that wasn't working. Yeah, in one of the most scientifically accurate sports in the world, it was just Max Verstappen's steering wheel that wasn't showing the right delta time in all of Interlagos.
He thought he was going to sneak it, wasn't he?
He tried it on, and do you know what? It's a Max type thing, isn't it? It's a Schumacher-esque type thing.
Yeah,
so
he knew exactly what he knew.
Exactly. Yeah,
he knew exactly what he was doing. He tried to time his delta perfectly with overtaking. He messed up. He got the 5-second end of, and he was lucky. He was very lucky.
I will add to everybody watching, Ronald is actually being race director for a iRacing league at the moment that we're being, so he's very into this right now. So he agrees you can't have an almost penalty.
No,
right?
It's like something can't be nearly unique.
I mean, I love this with F1. Document 47 from the weekend, and we haven't even got to a race, by the way, yet.
47.
The document 40, yes, and people are still crying that there's documents missing. Yeah, we're not going to release them all. Due to severe weather conditions, all teams are allowed to close their garage doors. Brilliant. You know what I mean? Who needs to send something out for that? We obviously go into qualifying, and we had a lot of deleted laps due to yellow flags. We had 5 red flags, I think it was.
In qualifying.
We had Stroll. We had Colapinto. We had
Albon,
Alonso, and
Sainz.
Yeah. All of them seem to be generally okay. Nobody seemed to complain until Stroll's. The accusation, obviously, that Verstappen was going to be able to stay into the top 10 if things happened. You know, if the red flag come out straight away, I can debunk that straight away because 1 second after or 2 seconds after the yellow flag come out, which is an accurate way to do it, Max was already 11th. So what was the best he was going to get on the grid? 16th. Wow, one more position. He still bloody won. I don't know why it's being cried about still. The race director let it run for 40 seconds before he flew the red flag. The accusation being about improving your lap times, nobody actually gained from this in terms of actually getting through. So what do we think on this? Was this the right call by race control, or do you think safety, which is what red flags are all about, was harmed in this? We'll go with Paul first.
It's very similar to the other decision that Niels Vidich made over the weekend. And again, it affected one team worse than another team, and that team cried a lot about it. And I think that's what we've ended up with in the media. It's not actually.
They all cried.
Yeah, apparently. I heard some whining from Baby Horner at some point. But yeah, I think again, let's analyse it in black and white. Did Niels Vidich follow the rules? Yep, he did. Is it down to him to call that? Is it his purview? Yes, it is. Thirdly, did he make a reasonable and common sense decision based on where the vehicles were around the circuit in terms of not placing a driver at any risk? Yes, he did. Did he allow laps to complete knowing full well that actually with a minute and a half to go, no one else was going to get a shot of finishing a lap anyway? So he might as well let them finish that lap, not put the other driver in any danger, knowing full well that the other two cars that were on the circuit had already go through the yellow flag system, which wouldn't be improving their laps anyway. So what harm did it do to wait another 45 seconds and allow the drivers that were nowhere near the scene of the accident to finish their lap, knowing full well they're going to have to go through the scene of the accident anyway? So at no point did he put any drivers under any safety issue, like Horner claimed. At no point did he favour a particular team, like Horner claimed. And at no point did he go against any of the rules and regulations? Also, by the way, Horner cried about the fact that he'd never done this before. He literally did it in the previous session. We've literally already talked about it. So, and it has happened multiple times in the past. I'm a bit sick and tired, frankly, while we're on the subject of Christian Horner and Red Bull whining all the time when things don't go their way, when they seem to think that everyone's out to get them and they've got some sort of chip on their shoulder, and that Niels Vittich is somehow corrupt. I find that quite ironic from a team that benefited quite well, actually, from 2021 in the same role.
I didn't mention it.
We've managed.
I'm just saying.
85
it just
minutes.
seems a bit hypocritical for a man who benefited wildly for a crazy decision by a race director to start criticising the current race director because he thinks it's gone against him. Wasn't saying anything after they won, was he? And benefited from several things that happened during the race. Oh, the timing of the red flag. Oh, no. Lando pitted just as the VSC had. Oh, my God, Niels Vittich corrupt. Where's that then? Where are you now, Horner? You're talking about the British press not turning up. Where the fuck are you?
Wajid?
One thing I'll say, they can already target flags to specific drivers. Why can they not do the same with red flags? Only give red flags to people still coming up to the accident. Anyone already past the yellow can finish the lap.
They wouldn't be able to give a red flag because that would confuse. Yeah. So they could come up with a different flag, but there are already 9 motor racing flags that the drivers have to remember. They're trying to keep it simple, remember, out there. And they're also trying to make sure that it's easily identifiable. There are still drivers that drive past flags and miss them. We're still seeing fines for people that drive through yellows or double wave yellows. Or even, amazingly, red flags are missed now and again because they can't see them.
Or ignore blue flags and stuff.
We're all allowed to ignore blue flags.
Don't get me onto blue flags with iRacing.
So you're saying 2 wrongs make right, and no, Nick, we are not bringing.
We're not bringing up. That's still a different podcast. We're doing that in 2031, the 10-year anniversary. Can others go out again in 90 seconds? Basically, they had 1 minute 38. By the time we got down pit lane, there's no way that any more than one car could have done it to set another lap time. So Max wouldn't have done it because he's so far down pit lane. Because being Constructors World Champions in the pit lane is such a bad thing. Never moan about it when they've got a straight line into the pit stop. Wajid, so your view on this?
What's there to say? Like he was going out anyway. It's not like he was 5th and then 7 drivers popped in quicker laps.
Yeah, exactly that.
He was going out. And I think Paul, if Paul did mention it, I may have missed it, so apologies. He went through a double waved yellow. His lap wouldn't have meant shit anyway. He wasn't gonna go quick enough. The dubiousness came from 7 drivers finished. All right, cool. So if the VSC doesn't, if the red flag doesn't come out, Max finishes his lap, or Max finishes his lap. It's not quick enough, or he heads into the pits anyway. Like it's literally.
Well, the difference is, as David said, is that if they called it immediately, then they still don't have enough time to go and do another lap, and he starts 16th.
No, but Paul, that's that point. Like the thing. They're complaining about the fact that they didn't control their own result when they were going out anyway. So literally all you're doing is complaining that 40 seconds later you were still heading out qualifying.
They should have put a banker lap in earlier in the session.
I've got to say it goes very much with the VSC on my opinion. That,
same for me.
It wasn't a race situation. As soon as everybody had finished that one lap, was anybody really going to go again? Yes, they were, but they were going to do a slow down lap and then go again. They've proved that nobody was doing double fast laps anyway. And everybody had to back off through Stroll. Stroll was still trying to get the car restarted. We saw it rocking back and forward. He tried to select first. He tried to select reverse. He wanted to try and get the car back to get it repaired, probably not realising that rear wings hanging off more than his career. And he couldn't get it started again. And also, we've got to remember that initially, the race director may not have seen that crash. So the marshals would turn around and say, I mean, I don't know why I'm thinking he's on the phone. It's a radio, but he would have said, yellow flag out first. So Stroll hits the wall, yellow flag comes out 138. Then the marshal contacts race control, tells him what's happened. They see it on the CCTV cameras because they may be looking at another camera at the time. You never know. And then they went, okay, right, what we're going to do here? Well, nobody's racing past this situation. Ocon and Verstappen have both backed off like they should do. I believe, I don't 100% know, that there's a rule in that you lose your lap time under a double yellow. I think it's a single yellow you can back off. But
you don't lose your time. You only lose your time if you set a faster sector in that time and you haven't slowed down, and then they'll remove it.
Yeah.
But you're not going to, like Wajid said, you're not, because it's double wave yellow and you've slowed down, you're not then going to set a good time anyway, are you?
It didn't make sense to red flag it and just stop people having a chance.
No, again, what we said earlier, David, right? We've been crying out for this common sense. There's some common sense applied.
Yeah.
And now that's wrong. And
also, to people who say marshals were in danger, you're not. Marshals do not go onto the track until they're told by race control they can, especially on an F1 circuit. You are tied down. You cannot just run out onto the track. I know it looks like they do, but they have a chief marshal there, a flag marshal, and then all your other marshals. And unless the chief marshal says go, you cannot go. You know, even in lower motorsport, it's the same now. Silverstone don't even let you even go near the circuit half the time. So that's... Anyway, we'll move on. The next steward's decision is quite simple. Apparently, Yuki Tsunoda was 0.2 kilometers over the speed limit on his reconnaissance laps. So he gets himself a nice €100 fine, which apparently... So, first one of the day. Ollie Behrman for driving into the back of car 43, which is Colapinto. I don't know why Colapinto seems to be trying to get involved. What are our views on this? He got a 10-second penalty when Colapinto got no damage whatsoever and Ollie Behrman spun around. Who wants to leave?
We're talking about cause and effect, right? So cause and effect don't come into account. It doesn't matter whether he slowed the other driver down or the other driver had damage. That makes no difference as to whether he gets a penalty or not. So let's forget about that.
It shouldn't. It shouldn't make a difference.
It shouldn't, exactly, because it's not in the rules, and it makes no difference as to whether he gets a penalty or he doesn't. The penalty is derived from unsportsmanlike behaviour. Did you make a pass, or did you not allow the other driver any room, or whatever, under the sporting code? And that's why it seems to be a bit odd, because I don't really see what he did wrong, other than he slid into him in the wet when the other guy made a mistake in braking. So a guy in front of you makes a mistake, you then don't react to that quick enough because it's the wet and you can't see the bloody guy. So you drive into the back of him and you get a 10-second penalty. That seemed quite harsh to me, I have to say. I mean, within the rules of what we're supposed to give out penalties for, it was within the rules. But it did seem quite, I want some common sense on that, for instance. And I would have said, actually, you review it, you go, yeah, well, he's made a mistake, then obviously Behrman's made a mistake. But Behrman will punish him because he hit the other guy, even though the other guy got away with no damage. Nothing happened. Neither of them are out of position. No one gained time or lost time. Let's let them carry on racing. But no, we've given them a 10-second penalty. It seemed a bit ludicrous to me.
My thing is just by the letter of the law, yes, probably. It's just it's just the consistency thing. How many times in a season would we have seen someone drive into the back of someone like that stupid first lap rule, that unwritten rule, the first lap. Well, if it happens on the first lap, it doesn't count because it's the first lap and you can't make for the first lap. Well, no,
but it's more intentional then, isn't it, than that was, because that wasn't even intentional. Like, Behrman had no idea what he's done wrong, because he was like, well, I wasn't trying to overtake him or anything.
And for me, the rules are rules. It shouldn't make a difference if it's lap 1, lap 71, lap 100, lap 101. But
I will say this, Wajid. I like the fact that common sense is applied to the first lap. So, but then why can't we carry on using common sense?
No.
Why is it suspended after lap 1?
No. And I agree. But my whole thing about the lap 1 thing is that, to be honest, for me, I think it's more detrimental for you if it happens on lap 1 because more than likely you're ending up 20th and you're ending up 20th and if you start first or second, you got to go all the way through the grid. You got to go all through the grid again. So if you're gonna apply the common sense for lap 1, then just sort of like categorically apply the common sense. Yes, letter of the law, but the only person that it hurt was Behrman.
The ironic thing is the driver stewards talking about it. Johnny Herbert, who we know, a 3-time race winner, but also Luciano Berti. Now, the last time I saw Luciano Berti hit at the back of somebody, it was Michael Schumacher in Hockenheim, and it did a damn sight more damage than that. So
and
what
his
would he
penalty
have got?
was
Nothing.
correct.
Yeah. So I think we're on the agreement that 10 seconds for Ollie was very harsh. I mean, it's almost same as Robert Schwartzman's penalty, but still hanging over him, even though he's not got an F1 drive and he's now going to Premier at IndyCar. Okay. But if he ever has an F1 debut, he's still got a penalty to serve.
Yeah, he has, yeah.
The next one was Oscar Piastri. Before we got to the rain, he ran into... I can remember who he ran into. He ran into car 30, so that was Lawson. And spun Lawson round at the Senna S. I think this is a pretty much slam dunk as well. I think we're all in agreement.
Yeah, it's fine.
He got desperate. He dived. It was too late. It spun him out. Cause and effect obviously shouldn't come in, but Lawson's losing positions. And that's probably cost Lawson a chance of beating Yuki. Well, I know we've got the red flag and everything, but he was probably a little bit higher there. So all in agreement?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah, we'll skip past that one because we know that's like... Right. I've actually realised we have actually missed something, but that's because it was sorted after the race, so we'll get to that. There's a summons for the tyre pressure check. Sorry? The start. We'll get to that one in a minute. Right. Nico Hulkenberg, physical assistance, it's called. Sounds a bit saucy, but physical assistance. He spun and got wedged at the Senna S. Got 4 marshals help push him back from a dangerous position, possibly. Do we, it's a black flag, but do we agree it should be a black flag? Or do we agree that, it's slam dunk like people are saying in chat in terms of the rules, but should that be the case?
Look, this is one of those rules that's been there for a very long time. This goes back to the 80s. We had a partial rule of you weren't allowed to receive what they called outside assistance at the time. And they called it outside assistance, by the way. And this is true story. You'll love this one. This is one of those quaint F1 things. They call it outside assistance, not marshaled assistance, because back in the day, they used to leave mechanics around the track, so that if your guy span out, they could actually go out and push them back onto the track. So that's why they called it any outside assistance. So you weren't allowed to get any outside assistance at all. And that rule is still written in there as any outside assistance. It's called physical assistance because obviously it means that someone's actually physically pushed the car back out. It's a mistake by the marshals, unfortunately, and it's just one of those extraordinary things where normally what happens is the car that goes into the barrier is damaged in some way, or it's dangerous that it could go back out on track, or it could bring carbon fibre shards or debris or whatever. And so usually the marshals will always say, no, get out of the car and we'll push this car away and we'll push it to a safe zone. They didn't do that on this occasion because A, he hadn't hit anything, and B, he was beached on an object which he shouldn't have been beached on. Really, it's a design fault of that particular part of the track. It goes back to the late 80s, early 90s when they first brought Interlagos back. They had a massive drainage issue in the Senna S. There used to be a river going across that. Never mind the fact that it's called Interlagos between 2 lakes. It was fucking in between 2 fucking rivers. And they decided to get away with that by putting all the drainage down the side. And because of that, they've had to barrier it up. So it actually has a lump. If you actually walk that part of the track, as I have, it's actually a lump. All right? And so what happened was when he got down there, he's literally beached the car on it. It's a flaw in the circuit system that's done because of the drainage.
Yeah, quite literally. So
literally stuck on the floor.
So quite for the people in the chat, the plank of wood is literally beat because of the stupid plank of wood that goes slightly. The plank of wood has effectively beached the car. So because of the stiffness of the suspension, they've literally just hung in the midair. So obviously he couldn't get off. So the marshals made a mistake because they're supposed to be trained. Had they been British marshals, for instance, they would not have made that mistake. They would not have pushed him back out. They would have pushed him down the side road. But they're Brazilian marshals. They don't get a chance to do F1 all the time. Most of them are volunteers as well. Keep that in mind. They wouldn't have had necessarily a direction from race control saying push him out to the track or push him behind the back.
race control wouldn't have even been watching that because of so much else going on. They probably would have just assumed that they were pushing behind the barrier. So when he got pushed back out onto the track, automatically that's a black flag. It's been a black flag since Nigel Mansell did it back in Portugal 1989. It's been there forever as a rule. So slam dunk, unfortunately, but it is really harsh.
Senna in Japan.
Senna in Japan also in 89 as well. After he had the thing, it was also black flag. Mansell's was worse in a way because he was actually black flag and he ignored it, and then he took Senna out.
And also just to add in regards to the Interlagos track, because for people who don't know, for the rest of the year it's a park. It's a public park. Like.
In a very bad part of town, by the way, in a very poor area within Sao Paulo.
I mean, that's a whole different. I didn't have that problem. I fit right in. I love Brazilian, so it was all good for me.
Yeah, me too. I loved it, but it is a very dangerous part of town.
It's a very dangerous part of town. It's an underfunded part of town. So, it's the sort of people that control the race actually don't have a decision over the park because it's controlled by the government and how they feel.
Yeah, well, that's why it's called the Sao Paulo Grand Prix, by the way, now, rather than the Brazilian Grand Prix, because the Brazilian government don't pay any money towards that race anymore. Yeah. It all comes from the municipal government of Sao Paulo.
So that's just for clarification. In terms of the flag, is it a harsh rule? Yes. Ronald asked the question to Paul, which I'll put up in the screen in a minute. Is it a harsh rule? Absolutely. Is it a slam dunk? Yeah, unfortunately, it is what it is. But Ronald asked you, Paul, would it have been different if there's a gravel trap there?
Well, it would, because the marshals wouldn't have been able to push him out of it. So they would have got a crane involved, and to get a crane involved, they have to fly double yellows at that point, or they have to red flag the race, depending on what's going on. So, yeah, it would have been very different.
And I do also want to add in regards to the marshals, they don't get as much sort of time as the British marshals do in Europe.
They don't.
But they still do a fine job. Like, even as volunteers, they still do a magnificent job, like every single year, without fail, with the limited
we've discussed before, Wajid, didn't we? I think there should be a permanent set of stewards and a permanent set of marshals at every single F1. They should be professional people trained at the highest level, and they should be going to every single race.
We've had this conversation, but aside from that, the marshals still did a terrific job because it was a busy week. It was a busy weekend for this week.
Oh yeah. And ultimately, they're just trying to help the driver. And they see him beach, they want to help the driver. They applauded themselves afterwards, right? Because they've done a great job of getting him off the beach and getting him back in the race. And they're like, "Yay, we did it, guys, we did it!" And that's just because they're pure enthusiasm for F1 and wanting to make sure they did the right thing, right?
Trust me, to be out as a marshal in those conditions, you have to be enthusiastic. Next up was one which I didn't even know had happened until I've just literally. That's why I was disappearing here. Carlos Sainz was reprimanded for trying to move the car away while marshals were attempting recovery. I didn't even know this had happened.
Did you not see it?
I didn't.
Yeah.
I can't even remember. I remember where he went off now.
Yeah.
He took his steering wheel off, put it back on, and then tried to drive away, apparently.
Yeah.
Which, to be honest, it was a very broken car. So he got a reprimand for that because it could have been a dangerous situation.
Yeah.
I think obviously just clarity of rules needed to be put into that one. Then we had obviously let me just have a look here. Yeah, and then we're on to the start. Your favourite part, everybody. I know we've gone through the Grand Prix, but we're now going back to the start of the Grand Prix. First, we had Calamity Hour by Lance Stroll.
Sorry, Paul. Sorry, Dave. Just quickly. Ron says about the science thing. Reprimand is not enough given the safety implications.
Yeah, I wouldn't say like other things. I'd say penalty points or something is enough because it's a first thing. It's a I mean, a lot was going on in that race. It's not a simple, okay, well, crashed. This was a race where if you got back into it, you were probably going to score points or whatever. So, I mean, look at how many times Ollie Behrman was off the track, or Perez, or Hamilton, and they just kept trying to get back into the race and have the chance. And Hamilton actually went and scored a point at the end, even though that car was, yes. But we'll go back to the start. Lance Stroll, was told to warm up the tyres, decided to dramatically try and warm up his tyres into turn 4, then put himself in the gravel, like we discussed before, and then it's a situation where the start was not aborted till everybody got round, because for some reason race director thought, yes, they can get a tractor out there, pull the car out, get rid of all the marshals in time for the start of the Grand Prix. I don't know why he even thought that. Let's start with that point first. Do we think, as a group, that it should have been called off sooner, as soon as the new Stroll was in the gravel?
As soon as he beached it, should have been called off.
Yeah.
As soon as he beached it.
I think the problem was that he didn't beach it to start with, and then again, it's very easy for us to look at this in isolation and say, "Oh well, look, he's beached it, like abort the start, go to a new start." Very easy for us to do that. I do know some of the chaos that goes on in a race control room at the start of a race, particularly in the wet. Not all of it, but I understand some of it. And it must be absolutely nuts in that. The pressure must be insane. They've got conversations going between different people on radios. They're looking at 18 different monitors in front of them. They've seen the Stroll go off, and they've got, okay, someone keep an eye on him. Make sure he gets back on the track, please. Meanwhile, I'm monitoring, is he maintaining pace at the front? Yes, he is. Why is there a big gap between third and fourth? What's that gap between ninth? Why isn't he speeding up? Why is that guy going slow? Oh, shit, he's in the gravel now? They're forming out. What the fuck is he doing? Okay, we're going to have to abort now. We're going to have to abort. Like, that's a rough idea of how it's gone in there. Like, it's fucking chaos in there, right?
Yeah.
And they're all trying to keep a level head. So he has to wait until they've all come round, they're on the grid, and then he checks and sees, fuck, they still haven't got it out the fucking thing. So then he has to say, now I have to abort.
Yeah.
He can't say halfway round the lap, abort, because they're still on the formation lap. They can't do that. He's got to come round to the start, and then the lights change. That was the killer point. The lights have to change, and when the lights change, you as a driver, and particularly as a fucking team, should know what those fucking lights mean. You shouldn't be then sending your drivers around for another lap if the lights aren't working the way they're supposed to be working. So that was the biggest failure for me.
The big mistake was not going on the green lights for Lando, yes. And he went. I kind of think this is a really strange one for me, because obviously Lando got it wrong, and the team probably got it wrong as well.
Yeah, the team got it wrong more than he did.
In terms of CJ, I mean, we have not heard the radio. All we know is they could have said, "Go on, Lando, off you go," and it does say green lights, and it does say extra formation lap. Now, I've said this to Paul on Monday, that I think there's a little issue between abandoned and aborted. You've got two words, very similar length. I know it sounds really weird, but in that pressure environment, you're looking at abandoned or aborted. Yeah. It's very confusing which one's which. Whereas you could have something like just extra formation lap, go, or restart.
But that's the whole point, David, of the light system. The light system say that.
Yeah.
By which version, whether it's flashing oranges or whether it's green, they have a system in place which has been, I think, for the last at least 5 years in that system, and it's worked absolutely fine. I don't understand why all of a sudden it didn't work. It didn't work on Sunday for some drivers, by the way. No, Red Bull, they told their drivers to stay there.
It's been
so some teams did and some teams didn't, and then within the same team, some drivers did and some. I don't get it.
Yeah. I was just going to say the lights thing. It's been longer than 5 years. It's been at least sort of like 10 years or so, to be honest.
Okay. I would say
since we've had aborted start lights.
Yeah, it's been longer than it's definitely been longer than 5 years.
Even more so then, because all the teams know that rule, right? It's like all weekend they seem to be forgetting about rules. Like you can't push a car back onto the track. You can't do an extra formation lap when an aborted start. You can't put a car back into the track if you've already take the steering wheel. Like all these basic fundamentals of safety, racing, and rules and regulation were all broken in one weekend. How?
Yeah. I mean, in terms of the start, I think, and this is just what I saw from the start. I mean, obviously, we saw the four drivers pull away who came up to the stewards in the end. Obviously, Lando went, Russell went, the two RB Visa Cash Apps went. Nobody else went straight away, but then everybody started following. And then it was a long time till about 4 or 5 cars at the back of the grid went. And And people said to me, "Oh yeah, but race control said go." Well, if race control said go, why didn't they stick the green lights on to say, "Okay, right, we've got this. You know, this has been a cluster fuck. Put the green lights on. Everyone will go round again, and we'll start again."
Yeah, but I
Whereas
think that was
the
point.
green
I
lights
think the
never went on.
No, I think you misunderstand. I think once some of them had gone, the race control then have no way of making the grid form properly, because then some cars have done an extra lap and some haven't. So he needs to keep the equilibrium at that point. So once some have already gone and he's assessed that actually the problem is cleared anyway, so there isn't a safety risk to anyone, driver or other drivers or marshals or whatever, then he kind of goes, "Oh well, fuck! Now you fucked it up, you idiots. Well, now the rest are going to have to go." So I think that's probably was the call. I think once some had already gone and he cleared the accident, I think they go, "Oh, for fuck's sake, okay, we'll send the rest round then. Like, all of them could go now." So he messages all the teams and they just say, yeah, you can go now.
Yeah, I'm not. I find it hard to believe that it was only the 4 cars that left before race control said go, because a lot of them were
I think
right
I
down
think you're
the
right. I think a
circuit.
few more had gone, and then by that time they're kind of like, well, look, we're just going to have to make them all go round now.
Because that's the problem. Like Ronald said, he had to radio the teams to say go.
Yeah.
But you radio the teams. It's not like Formula E where you radio all the drivers and you go. Right,
No, but
west.
so the FIA have a message system which all of the teams use. It's not just I
Yeah.
go, "Hi, is that Christian Horner? Christian, can you let your 2 drivers go? Hi, is
Can I
that
have your
Zach?
WhatsApp
Now?
number?"
They don't do that. They just put one message on they put one message on the system. It's the FIA internal system, and it comes up all of the pit lane monitors, and they read that and they go, "Oh, we've been told they should all go." And at that point, all of the teams message their drivers and say, "Yeah, you can go and do that now." So I don't think that's unreasonable. I think that was fine.
Yeah. In terms
I also
whole...
think, thankfully, they haven't done anything to the drivers, because I would have hated for the drivers to have been penalised, basically. You know, if they'd knocked 30 seconds off the race time or knocked them points or done something that affected the race result, I think that would have been very unfair based on a procedural issue, not a competitive issue. So I'm glad in a way that they've gone back and fined all the teams, because the teams need to know that stuff, really.
Yeah, the teams should know. Race managers should know.
Yeah.
I also say, a lot of people will say, "Oh, they went round and it was very dangerous for people recovering the car."
No, it wasn't.
To be honest, it wasn't. It was controllable
Wasn't at
and
race
things
speed.
like that.
Yeah.
I will also add that in terms of the drivers, at that point you are trying to get your car into position to start racing. There's so many controls these days to do so. I also think if they'd thrown a 5-second, 10-second penalty, whatever, straight away for it, it's a situation where they would have took it before red flag anyway, because all them 4 cars pitted.
They didn't know at that point. I'm just pleased that they waited until after the race, didn't apply penalties to the drivers, didn't give them time penalties or competitive penalties, and actually discussed it after the race, after everything's calmed down, and made sure that everything was dealt with professionally, and they did that. And so I don't think you can give competitive penalties to drivers that have made a procedural error.
There's 2 messages just if Wajid's keeping going. There's a picture of Crane with Stroll's car as the leaders passed. I understand that, but
but the leaders aren't passing under racing time. They're passing under VSC or safety car.
There is many a time as a marshal that you will be on the track of the same car as times the car's going around. We can't stop the race. We'd be at the stage of stopping a race every time there's an incident. Because you'd also say, well, what about safety cars? There's no point having safety cars to recover cars. In terms of Ronald's Dorian Pan situation,
that's totally different. That was at the end of the race. You did an extra celebration.
That's different because Dorian Pin has gone round. Then, as the field has finished, the safety car goes out and follows the final car. Now, when it follows the final car, that's an indication to all marshals, go out and make sure the track's clear and safe for the next session.
Doing an extra celebration lap is a massive safety issue.
Yeah. She has actually gone out onto what is one of the most dangerous tracks in the sport as well, Jeddah. I know that shouldn't make a difference, but it is, where the marshals are going out to make sure it's clear because the safety car has gone round. A Dorian Pan has gone round again after it. And then we get into a situation. I mean, it was far more serious and far more stupid. But if you remember, was it Eric Comas back in Imola 94 coming round when they're trying to recover Senna? You know, you get into that kind of situation, and it you know, the marshals won't be expecting it. You know, they have a whistle.
As soon as she's finished that race and every other car has crossed the line, the track is considered dead.
Yes.
And those cars are on a slowdown lap returning to the pits. It's dead. Therefore, everything else starts happening around the track because the track is dead. The track wasn't dead at the weekend when they pulled away. It was still live. There were no fucking marshals on the track because they knew that the track was live still. There's no way they were going out there. And they certainly didn't go round under racing conditions. So
Stroll crashed under non-racing conditions, yes. But like Ronald said, we are talking about Lance Stroll.
Yeah.
In terms of, it's the same as we say, with a safety car. If you had a safety car conditions, they'd be going at the same speed. So now, every time we have an accident and need a recovery, we red flag the race. That's what we'd have to go to if we were going to say stuff like that. I understand what you're saying. Oh, sorry. Apparently, the FIA being big on safety. It's a difficult.
Sorry, hang on. What have they not done? They fined all the teams. They've reprimanded all the teams. It was a procedural issue. It didn't endanger anyone. It wasn't a safety reason. It was a procedural issue. Therefore, they've done the right thing. They've used common sense and fined them.
Also, they don't come down hard on drivers with the yellow flag thing. The FIA, in my opinion, are selective when it comes to safety and if and when a penalty is thrown. There's too much.
We've already said, haven't we, Wajid? We've agreed that they are inconsistent.
And that's why I'm just like sort of
go on.
In my opinion, to Ronald's thing. If the rules were consistently applied, as the three of us here and every F1 fan has wanted, then Ronald, I would totally be with you in terms of the FIA are trying to come down harder on the whole safety issue. The problem is, over the last 2 to 3, even if you take the last 2 to 3 races, there is too much inconsistency with the penalty application, who gets what, and there's too much subjectivity in terms of what's applied, how often it's applied. And that's why this conversation is currently, everyone has a difference of opinion, because there isn't consistency in terms of the penalty application. Obviously, the aborted start, totally different, doesn't happen often and stuff like that. But that's why there's so much opinion around this, because it's too subjective. There's not just this happened. There's too much subjectivity in the decisions, and that's my only thing.
Yeah.
And I know you say consistency is a whole kettle of fish, but the reason the three of us and everyone in the chat, which we really appreciate you guys getting involved, is having this conversation, is because consistency hasn't been applied with the FIA rulings, and this is why this conversation is allowed to happen. So that's why, like, I don't buy the. I would also side more with like sort of Paul and Mr. Magpie in this. In this
Ronald has also said, if I was a race director and a driver pulled away before the light goes green, he would go ballistic. I get that, but that is why race director has to follow the rules. There is no rule. There is no precedent for this. It's never happened before. And now, going into next season, there will be a rule about it and a penalty for it. But going back to the yellow flag thing, I can think of people have got reprimands for it. I can think of Max Verstappen, I think it was in Qatar one year, maybe 2021, got maybe a 3-place penalty for it. But the last yellow flag infringement I can think of that really caused hassle, we're talking possibly 90s. I mean, Jacques Villeneuve, I remember, back in 97 in Japan, ended up losing 2 points over a practice one. But I can't think of a huge amount of yellow flag infringements that's affected a race result, which is an interesting way to put it. But I understand the safety. You know, there's a whole thing about how safe is safe. Now, we've got to remember Formula One is probably safer than ever now. And maybe we have to look at it that way and say, we don't want them, as much as people want drivers to be alive and everything, we don't want them killed in accidents or whatever, but these cars are stupidly safe now. It takes a freak accident for something to happen. Or, in the case of Jules Bianchi, it was a procedural error that caused that issue. And also, no disrespect to Jules Bianchi, but he was speeding under conditions which are really, really tough. So it's a really kind of complicated situation. So Paul has said he agrees. I think, Wajid, do you agree with the procedural situation? The fine, shall we say?
Yeah, I think it was handled. I think it was just a clusterfuck by everyone, to be honest. Everyone seemed to forget what the rulings were and what should have been done. I think it was just a total clusterfuck by everyone.
I think there's a little bit of panic as well, because we don't often get this. I mean, the last time we got this, Brazil last year when Charles Leclerc went off.
No, but I mean, but also just look at the week. Like, it was a totally unique weekend, wasn't it? Qualifying was totally cancelled. On the Saturday, they'd run 7:30 in the morning. They had 2.5 hours to prepare for the race. They were trying to beat the rain and stuff. It was just a total clusterfuck of a weekend. So
I would say to Indoor Fatty, yes, there are clear instructions. There's clear instructions, but there is no penalty for getting it wrong. There's no rulings for getting this procedural error wrong.
Yeah, I think he's talking about something else as well. He's talking about the virtual safety car. And
the VSC.
We're talking about the start line procedures and 4 cars going away when they shouldn't have gone away.
Anyway, gentlemen, we're 2 hours in and we've still got a bunch of penalties.
We've got one more thing. We've got one more penalty before we decide on the FIA's official couple of things. So the tyre pressure checks. They say their tyre pressure checks in the document for both of the Mercedes. They came away with fines of €5,000 per.
They should have been disqualified.
Yeah.
I'm trying to work out whether there's actually changes.
So I think they said, what did they say? That they reduced the pressure of the tire with like 4. Was it like less than under the 5 minutes or something? What crazy like that?
So what happened was they went to check the tire pressures, because what happened was the gate was not immediately opened because of the mess we had of cars being miles around the formation lap. So the gate wasn't opened. The FA accepted that this short notice, it was extremely difficult, if not impossible, for the teams to follow the procedure prescribed by the technical directive, which they've gone in to check the tyre pressures. And what I believe is, because they've attached it to the car and pulled it off, some air's come out. That's what I'm generally feeling from what I've read. I could get why it would need to be a DQ. Both of you both sort of said it should have been a DQ. This decision should not be considered as a precedent for any similar breach in the future. So I think at that point they just went, we don't really know.
Yeah, they basically said, look, we might have fucked up, and because we might have fucked up, we don't want to penalise you, is basically what they've said. But they've now said, but in the future, we're not going to be so lenient.
We're not going to have
that's like a warning to the rest. Again, it's one of those, like, it's not, there's nothing in the rules that explicitly says, like, if we remove some of the air and then we test again and you're below the threshold, that will let you off, or that we'll fine you, or we'll just, there is no rule about that. So they have to then tell the team that there's going to be a rule, but they can't do anything about them at that point. It's the same with the thing they found on the Red Bull car earlier in the season. There's nothing that says in the rules that it can't be on the car but unused, but there will be next season.
Oh, you mean the system? You mean the thing that they found in Kota, the system?
Yeah.
So to be quickly to be clear to Ronald,
go on.
he says it's not about pressure. It says the fact is tyre pressures were adjusted, pressure released, with wheels already fitted to the car. Yep. So that's a procedural error, but they needed to take the wheels off to be able to do that.
And what they're saying is because you did that, and then you've taken them off, and then when we measured them, they were below. In theory, they should have been disqualified if they'd followed the letter of the law. But because they procedurally fucked up, but there's nothing in the rules that says what happens after that. They had to then say, well, we can't do anything about it.
Go on, Wajid. What were you about to say?
No, I might just like with everyone else in the chat. The other 9 teams on the grid, grid didn't have a problem.
Everyone else did it all right, didn't they?
It was just the
Yeah.
it was just the Mercs.
And that's partly why I'm with Wajid on this. If you break the rules, you get disqualified. Well, when they are black and white, please fucking apply them.
Yeah, I understand there might have been procedural errors, and the FIA were like up and down everything with what had gone on, etc., etc. I get all that. It's a DQ. It's a black. Like for me, like it doesn't matter procedure or not. If every other team hasn't had a problem with the tire pressure, if every other team has managed to, after the procedural error, still managed to get everything else okay, Mercedes can't. Who cares? Disqualify them. End up.
But again, coming back to it, Wajid, what have we said? Consistency, yes, but we'd also like them to have some common sense and apply it. And maybe we can't have both. Because maybe if we give them common sense, this is what happens. We give them common sense and they go, well, look, that's a common sense ruling because they fucked up. We couldn't take the tire pressure.
It's fair. But I agree. I agree with you, Paul. I totally agree with you. The only difference is this time, with the start procedure, there was multiple teams that didn't know that was going on.
Yeah,
this time, it's one team with both their cars that have no idea what's going on, and the other 9 teams are about the problem. I understand why you're coming about the common sense thing, but then there's common sense that every other team's managed to get it right.
Yeah, it just gets messy as a whole. The final thing we have actually to bring up was the rain shower we had. It was due to be 5 minutes in the middle of the race. The race control tries so hard not to red flag it. I think rightly, because at the end of the day, we've got wet tires. Bloody use them. Look at Yuki Tsunoda. He stuck the wet tires on. What happened with Yuki Tsunoda? He was 5 seconds a lap quicker than anybody else.
Checo was 8 seconds quicker at one point.
Ocon sitting there on the tires, going 5 seconds lap quicker than Max Verstappen on the inters, and they're both on inters. So for me, yes, it did get really bad. We've heard the radio messages, but the thing is, we need to make. I think we need to make it a bit more clear with cars in front. We have one little light at the moment, don't we? We could make it clearer, but at the end of the day, I actually think they got that pretty much spot on. It got really bad. Call a safety car. The shower's going to end very, very soon. What's the point in red flagging it now? Oh, Colapinto's crashed. We're going to have to because it's blocking the track.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you to a point. But I think there's a bigger issue here, and I think the issue is the tyres. And I've seen this happen before in other races. It's almost like the drivers on the inters now know that if they stay out there long enough and the conditions become too dangerous, it will get red flagged, and then they can change their tyres anyway. So there's no strategy and there's no real reason for anyone else to come into the pits earlier than that and change onto wet tyres, which some of the drivers did here. And I think that's wrong because they are then penalised directly for doing the right thing and being safer.
Yeah.
And I think we should stop that. And the only way to stop that, unfortunately, is you remove the intermediates and you have rain tyres. And that's it. You have rain tyres or you have dry tyres. You can't have intermediates anymore because they are the better tyre for almost 90% of the wet conditions that we have, right? The blues are actually called monsoon tyres. So no one ever wants to put them on because they know they're going to be slower on them in the majority, 90% of wet times. And then when it dries, the inters are great because they just wear down to become slicks. And they all know this. So I don't see how we can have a 3-tyre system between different treads. But I think we're going to have to go to a one-tread system
that's where I disagree.
To actually have fairness.
Go on, Wajid.
No, Paul, that's where I disagree with you because the reason they stay on the intermediate tyres so long is because they're also gambling on because we know if we complain enough on the radio, they're gonna red flag because that's the precedent.
Yeah, that's what I said. Which is wrong.
No, right? No. But my follow up to that is because they know they can complain as long as they can. They get that stupid rule where they get the free pit stop on the tire as well.
It's exactly what I just said, Wajid.
That's
exactly what I just said. That's what I'm saying. Remove the thing that they've got to use as a weapon, which is intermediate tires. Remove them.
No. I'm saying no. My thing is, don't remove the intermediate tire. My thing is remove that stupid rule they have where you're allowed to get a free pit stop under the red flag. That's where
But they can't do that because that's put there for safety reasons. They're abusing that rule.
Yeah,
and that's where I think it needs to be. That's what I think needs to be changed.
maybe we need to
You
look
can't
at
change
some...
it. That's
No,
the reason
but-
it's there is because it keeps them alive.
No. Right. So they're allowed what I mean is they're allowed the free pit stop, but there's the rule of, that rule that they have where you have to make
what you're saying is you can change them in the
Pit stop, you
red
have to
flag,
make
but
them-
you still
you
have to make another pit stop.
You still have to make your pit stop because it's just bogus at this point. Like they've got to do something of the rule because I understand there's an element of luck, but just
So you're
too
saying
many
that they
things
would
about
lead
it.
them
There's
out of the
too
pit
much-
lane, and they would come back round and then come back into the pits. And
No,
change
no.
their
What he's saying is you can have your change under
No.
red flag, but it doesn't count as your change of tyres.
But it doesn't in the wet race anyway. They don't have to change their tyres in the wet race.
But
Are we still there, Wajid?
Yeah, I
So
forgot
it's
about
just jumping a bit.
that. My wife has been crazy. So
It's
apologies
all right.
about that.
Carry on.
Yeah, I forgot about the rule under the wet. That's under the.
I
that's under
do
the
kind of
that's-
get where you're
that's-
coming
That's my
from, though,
apologies.
because
I don't
Yes,
see
okay,
any
so-
other way of stopping them abusing the system. Basically, it's drivers taking the piss with the system, right?
yeah,
And
I
putting
do agree.
themselves
A
at
lot of
risk
it's
and other
down to
people at
drivers.
risk by staying on the inters because they know the wets aren't good enough, and they know if they stay on the inters that eventually the race director is going to throw a red flag to stop the race because it's too dangerous for them out there. In which case, they then get a free pit stop to change the tyres to wets, or wait until it's dry enough to have slicks or whatever it might be. And there's no penalty for that whatsoever. And they're playing the game, and I don't want them to play the game. And the only way I can see of stopping them playing the fucking game is to remove the weapon that they're using against us, and that's to take away the inters. What harm does it do?
So from sorry, Dave. Let me say this.
No,
So
go on, Wajid.
that force one stop thing, I think it needs to be uniform across all the weather systems,
all the conditions.
like all the conditions, rather than just
Okay, but how would
just in the
that
slicks and stuff
work
like-
though if they've already stopped during the race and then they red flag it? They don't have to stop again, do they?
No, but what he's
Sorry,
saying
Wajid.
is people
No.
who have
What
think-
I'm saying is, what I'm saying is the people who have had their one stop, and the people who haven't, who tried to take advantage.
Yeah,
and
but my
hope for the
point was
red flag.
more: what if they've all stopped once and then we have a red flag?
But that's totally different. That's because that's everyone's stopped. Everyone's stopped. Though
No, but you might have half on inters and half on wet still. In which case, one's benefiting them from the stop and one's not.
I don't think
I-
there's any way.
I know where you're coming from. I would say that the only way, other than banning one of the tyres, whether it's wet or intermediates, the only other way of doing it is what you said originally. But actually, they're not allowed to change their tyres in the pit lane. They have to wait until the race restarts. You put the safety car out front, so they do one lap under the safety car, which they can do on either tyre because it's wet or monsoon.
then they
Don't
have
really
to
make a
pit.
fucking difference, right? And then they make them pit at the end of the lap to put the tyres on that they want. Maybe they could do it that way, but I don't know if that's safe enough in their way, if you know what I
The
mean.
thing is, like, the big crow of safety, I think, goes completely out the window. I mean, we've heard certain people's
It really
radios,
does.
but then you look in them conditions. Lando Norris was the one who ended up passing George Russell under those conditions, and-
very comfortably, may I add.
very
Very
comfortably, and right behind him. And then they moan about spray. Yet the arguments were coming from everybody who was on inters. So go in the pits. If you don't,
Yeah, you should be
Behrman was
pitting
like-
then, shouldn't you?
yeah,
You shouldn't be
Behrman was
waiting
like,
for
I
the
don't
race
want to
change
die.
the race. Yeah, exactly.
It's
They're
like,
looking for a
well, go and
competitive
put-
advantage, like every other Formula One team and every other
Yeah.
Formula One driver. And I'm saying, take that away from them, unempower them about it. And if that means taking away their intermediates, take them away.
But then the issue then becomes is, what do you do in that period when the track's greasy or there's still
Well, then
puddles and stuff
yeah.
like that?
But then you stay out there and you build a tyre. Pirelli build a tyre which is capable of doing that.
But
Because at the moment they haven't
the
done
thing-
that. They built a tyre that works really well in the dry, but is a treaded tyre that wears down to a slick. And they've built a tyre which works in 90% of the rain conditions. It doesn't work in the other 10%.
But I'm gonna slightly defend Pirelli here in this situation in terms of because so many races have been red flagged straight away as soon as there's a drizzle, stuff like that. The wet weather tire hasn't really been used or tested much in that condition. So I understand what you're saying, that Pirelli haven't built a tire, but also when the FIA, in every other regard, don't give a shit about the rules, but are so quick to throw a red flag out as soon as it hits rain, like it's an oval track or stuff like that. That's where I'll defend Pirelli, because
and I would agree with you if there wasn't any other motorsport in the world that Pirelli took part in, and there is. Endurance racing has plenty of rain. Pirelli take part in that. They've got data. They've got rubber analysis. They understand how to build a tyre. They understand the construction of the tyre and how it will be under pressure and how it will deal with the amount of rain that it can shift. They can even tell you precisely how many litres a tyre tread will actually shift out of the way. So they know all of this. They've got data on it. Everyone else has been able to build a wet tyre. What are you telling me? Because Pirelli can't.
No. I'm not saying that. Because when Pirelli came in and the wet weather tire was so bad, right? That precedent has still gone on for every single wet race afterwards. What my thing is that the FIA have been so quick to throw out a red flag in any rain condition. We don't actually know what this wet tire is like now, at all.
No, I mean you're right. We don't.
We're only going off the basis of what the drivers not wanting to go onto the wet tire, because of things that happened when Pirelli came in with the wet tire. At this moment in time, none of us actually know how good or bad the wet weather tire is, because they never want to use the wet weather tire, because the race is called off as soon as there's some rain. That's where
let me ask a different question then, because you're knocking my idea down poorly, I think, but whatever. Come up with a better idea then. How do we stop them? How do we stop them abusing this system?
But my point wasn't about abusing the system. I thought we were just talking about the
just talking tires.
I was just talking but
that links back to the point I was making. You're shooting down my idea because of all these other things, but not once have I heard you come up with a different idea. I'm saying I think the only way of getting rid of their abusing of the safety regulations is to remove the intermediate tyre. I don't understand what else we can do. What we've said we can't really make them do an extra lap. It's probably unsafe. We can't really force them to pit for wets during a wet system. We can't do it because they've already might have changed tyre during the race. We can't enforce the one change of a tyre because it's a wet race at the start of it. But we can't do any of those things. So I'm still not hearing any other reason as to how we stop them doing this. Because we need to stop them doing it. They're abusing the safety rules. That's what they're doing. They're causing safety issues around the track, not just themselves, but also the marshals around the track and everyone that comes to watch. By staying out on intermediates when they need full wets. And they're not going to do it because they know the race director is going to flip the switch and turn it red any minute, which they then get the free pit stop. How are we going to stop that?
I would say in terms of the wets, though, a lot of drivers, the terrible wets, give us decent wets or whatever. Don't worry, Wajid doesn't run away. I just know there's people in his house. In terms of the whole situation, that's all right. In terms of the whole situation, I think qualifying this weekend for the race proved the wets are no problem whatsoever.
Yeah.
Because they went out of them, no complaints, and got on with it and set blistering lap times on them and had no issues. So I don't want to hear the wet tyre's not good enough anymore, but I don't also want to hear somebody like Behrman, who's coming for his third Grand Prix. I understand it's bloody scary. Yes, it's a lot. We've all driven on motorway with like those conditions with windscreen wipers and not being able to see the climb from. It's not nice. But you're now at the top of your level and you should be able to drive in rain. And yes, the spray needs to be sorted. How we sort that, I don't know. But that's the only problem.
But hang on. We're talking about the spray that comes off ground effect cars. Yeah. What do you think with a ground effect? Like, this is the most ridiculous.
I know.
They knew this was going to be a thing, right? Surely.
Yeah, like I'm sorry.
Much smarter people than me knew this was going to be a thing.
Yeah. Well, you'd like to think so, but you know, we've lost the V10s for hybrid engines, so you know.
Well, we say that because obviously we can go on forever with this. We said we weren't going to be here till 1 o'clock in the morning. Parameters constantly change, Nick. Yes, but The one thing I would say, in terms of hybrids, touring cars dropping hybrids.
Yeah.
World Rally cars dropping hybrids.
But are they
It's
not?
only time.
Are they dropping the hybrids now, the British touring cars, or have they suspended that?
British touring cars have fully confirmed that
fully
hybrids are
confirmed. They're fully confirmed.
Wow.
The WRC, it is rumoured that
Crazy.
it has been agreed. So it shows, I mean, it goes back to the diesel cars of WEC. Diesel cars come in like something crazy, and then all of a sudden went, we don't want diesel cars.
Yeah.
We'll get hybrid. And then they'll take away hybrid, and they'll bring in electric or hydrogen, I think it was at WEC at some point.
I mean, I think the hybrid thing isn't that linked to governments around the world banning hybrids from like 2030 and 20. I mean, our own UK government have banned hybrids as well as all petrol and diesel from 2030s onwards.
No, they've extended the 2030 thing now, haven't they? Because they realized
they?
don't have. Yeah,
Was that in the last few days?
No. It was last year. So because they realized they don't have the infrastructure, here
No,
anymore.
it's still, as far as I know, it's still 2030.
I don't know.
I haven't seen anything in the last 12 months that changed that. I thought you were talking about the last few days or something.
Oh no, it got pushed. It got pushed to 2035 by the
It
Tory
did?
government. Yeah, by the Tory government.
We'll
Oh, right.
find that out afterwards, and we'll have that discussion elsewhere. See, Paul's already searching it. You know what he's like. We've got to say, though, thank you, everybody, for hanging around for this podcast. It has gone on a lot longer. Yes, I think Nick's got it exactly right. Drivers complain about anything instead of just getting on with it.
Yes,
We've seen it. We've seen it all the time, haven't we? We've seen drivers go, "Oh, give him a penalty." It's like, yeah, okay, whatever. Anyway, I will say one thing right now. Wajid, you still haven't got your apology. It's still on. We do have a title race going into Las Vegas. We do, technically. Didn't say which title.
Mathematically, maybe.
Mathematically, but who knows? Who knows what might happen? Things can change. It's over, Nick says. W4 from Vijar. And Nick tells me to accept it's over. I'm not accepting it's over. I'm never wrong. Paul, thank you for joining us again.
Yeah, no worries. Always a pleasure.
We've stretched it on yet again. Wajid, thank you for coming. I know you've got some revision to do, which you should have been doing about 2 hours ago.
Yeah, get on with it, Wajid. What are you doing?
No, it's always a pleasure to.
Oh, there we go, Wajid. Paul, in the private chat, Wajid has passed on the 35 diesel.
I'll have a read now. I'm obviously completely out of the loop when it comes to that.
So there is. So okay, Paul. Last time I looked at the diesel, VW were getting sued for it. So, Wajid, thank you for joining us again, especially with your revision to get on with.
No, I totally. Obviously, it's always a pleasure being here with.
And hopefully,
and Paul. Paul, honestly, thank you very much as always.
Yeah, no, honestly, it's genuinely a real pleasure being on with you guys.
I am going to throw. Wajid has the same chance of marrying. Well, there's an offer for you, Wajid.
I think he's basically saying there's no chance.
You never know.
Also, I somehow think
mathematically, Wajid still has a chance.
I also somehow think my Latina girlfriend won't appreciate that either. So thank you.
Very, very true. I'm going to throw it out here. Paul obviously is live on Twitch, and he is tomorrow, I believe. So go follow Red Eye on the channel. I'm sure somebody can do a shout out. If not, we'll shout it out in the chat. Wajid, you can be followed at Burnt Out Travels on Instagram. Yes, moral of this podcast, Lando is a bottle job. Yeah, Nick, you've been saying it since the start. Go away. And obviously, if you need to, you'll have to do proper shout out, Ronald. It doesn't work on here. There I am. On all the socials, hardly ever using them. Silly me. But that is the finally the end of this podcast. I will try and trim this down so you can actually just see the important.
I just want to say quickly, chat. Honestly, really appreciate you guys getting involved today with the FIA conversations and stuff like that. It does make the show so much better when you guys get involved. So thank you very much to Nick, to Ronald, to Vijar, who's just come in, to
the indoor.
The indoor, to everyone who got involved. So really, really, really appreciate it.
We're not going to call you the indoor factor. We're going to call you Wajid's marriage proposal.
Let's definitely not do that.
So we're going to throw it out there. Thank you all for being here. We will be live sometime next week for a preview. And then we've got another triple header, which is going to be nice and fun. So we will see. Oh, yeah, it's Darth Sydney, isn't it? That's who it was. Yeah, changing name for whatever reason. We will see you very, very shortly. And it is goodbye.